Rebel Force Radio presents.
Last night, a Jedi was murdered.
She's killing Jedi.
I didn't do it! Believe me!
She was my student. I trained her. Now she is a student of the dark side.
This is a fight that you will not win.
The Jedi live in a dream, but an Acolyte kills the dream.
This is Rebel Force Radio's The Acolyte After Show.
All right, well, we may not be the first word on this episode, but we'll be the final word. Or at least the word that y'all have been waiting for. Give the proper RFR after show treatment to the final episode of The Acolyte, episode 8. Of course, we did drop a little sort of a preview, you might say, of this last Tuesday, just to get those really raw thoughts and feelings out as we just watched the show. And we had FJ DeSanto on, and boy, FJ laid a lot of really great stuff on us, as he always does. The guy is just, well, he's good. He's good to talk to in situations like this because he can sort of bring you down to earth and sort of open the door to what's really going on, most likely behind the scenes on a show like this. What are they really thinking about? Why do they make the decisions that they make? So having somebody like FJ is really, really important. And also, Kyle, we're going to be talking to him as well. Believe me, he's got a lot to say on The Acolyte. We want to make sure that we get a chance for him to have his say. But tonight is all about you guys, the Rebel Force Radio after show listening audience, viewing audience. We really, really appreciate you being here each and every week. And sorry we had a little change in the schedule last week, but we are back here and very excited to be talking about not just this final episode, but looking back at the whole season, the whole series. Is this a season finale? Is this a series finale? We don't know. And it's not been decided. So even if you're out there saying, oh, I read that there's never going to be a season 2. There's never going to do it. The Lucasfilm and Disney, they lost their shirts over this show and they're embarrassed and they're never going to. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. Nothing is official until, well, with Disney and Lucasfilm, nothing's official until you're actually sitting there watching it, either in a movie theater or at home. So anyway, we're going to have a lot of fun this week. And by we, of course, if you're new to the program introductions, it may be in order. My name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yeah, The Acolyte's over. No more fresh Star Wars every week. We're just going to have to live on throughout the brutal summer months with, and actually get outside maybe a little bit and away from the television. Well, I mean, it's kind of bittersweet that it's over. But there's also, some report cards. It's time for the year's over and the bell is rung, and now we're going to give out some report cards and talk about the grades that the show may or may not have earned. And in some categories, I have incomplete.
Wait a minute. So you're saying that Leslie Headland didn't turn in all of her homework over the course of the year?
Right. She's going to have to go to take additional courses in summer school, and summer's almost over. So, whatever. I think Leslie Headland does earn the Rebel Force Radio 2024 STFU and Just Make Star Wars Award. There's no question about that. It's a unanimous decision, and there is talk behind the scenes about giving her a Lifetime Achievement Award. And this is only her first year in Star Wars. She's got a real flapper on her, and she doesn't know when to tone down the additional thoughts she plants in your head when you go in to watch these episodes. And I've always said that if you lose confidence in the storyteller, you start to lose confidence in the story. And Leslie's had a real colorful week in the interview, the interview circuit. And I got to be honest with you, I don't like some of the thoughts she's planting in my head. And so I was wondering if that was really going to affect my rewatch. And I did do a rewatch, a full season rewatch, just to see things in a different perspective after seeing the finale. But I have a viewing order in which I eliminate episodes 3 and 7.
Okay.
So those
Completely
are
eliminate. Or do you just save them to the end?
No, I eliminate.
You don't even watch
I
them?
already know the backstory. So
Wow.
what do I care?
okay.
This is for rewatch purposes only. I just can't go back there with those witches and all that. I just can't do it. And those kid actors, I just can't do it. But those are the 2 episodes that were directed by the guy named Koganada.
Mm-hmm.
So I call my viewing order, my preferred viewing order, the Nada Koganada viewing order. No Koganada. And but I thought it was good to rewatch it, even with some of the toxic stuff Leslie Headland planted into my head via these Collider interviews she does.
Yeah.
Oh my
I kind of
goodness.
miss it, Jim, when you had to actually buy the DVD or the Blu-ray and watch the commentary in order to find out what the director or the creatives really thought. You had to go, I think, out of your way. Now, because everything is so tribal and mission-based and activist-based and first this and first that's all about identity, that it gets shoved in your face. You don't have to. You can just be minding your own business, scrolling your feed and going, Leslie Headland says the Jedi are evil, and all of a sudden there you are, and you're sucked in. So, and some of that stuff is sensational, but you're absolutely right. Some of the comments certainly have made some of what I watched make a little bit more sense, and not necessarily in a good way, because I think she does tip her hat a little bit. And, frankly, I think she has some issues, and I think she's trying to work through those issues by creating these stories. And that's really my biggest problem, but we'll get to sort of the overall takes on the series and the stories as a whole. But we do want to talk about this episode because pound for pound, I think this was one of the better episodes of the whole season, maybe the very best of the whole season. Yeah, just in terms of the action, the flow, the pacing, I really did like this. I do think overall for the series that pacing was really challenging for me, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But let's do the tale of the tape here on this particular episode. We're talking about episode 8 of season 1, The Acolyte. So using the Acolyte series title as an episode title, which is kind of interesting. Directed by Hanel M. Culpepper. Now, if you listened to our show last week with FJ DeSanto, I believe, I can't remember if he told us on air or off air, but FJ has worked with Hanel in the past and has really enjoyed working with her and believes that she is a great director. I would agree with that. I thought that as far as the direction goes, this was one of the better episodes, written by Jason McAuliffe. And we got an original air date for those of you listening to this in the future of July 16th, 2024. And this was one of the longer episodes. I think the longest episode was about 43 minutes and 10 seconds on this one. So there you go. That is the tale of the tape for the final episode. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about, and I like I said, I liked the direction of this episode. We again some more great saber battles and whatnot. But the thing that I can't get over with this episode in particular, but really the whole series, is just how these characters, I feel, are always contradicting themselves. They say one thing, then they say the opposite, or they do the opposite. And I just want to throw this out here because I'm trying to understand why they went back to Brendok. Why did Saul take May back to Brendok? And he says, there's a virgins on this planet, and now that you and Osha are both alive, I can prove it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just that he wants to sort of explain to the Jedi what really happened on Brendok. I'm guessing he wants to be able to provide some reasoning, some context for why it happened. And the why is, and this is what I really need help with.
Okay.
The why is Osha and May, as far as I know, they are not the virgins. They're not the virgins. The virgins is on the planet, which amplified the force that gave Mother Anastasia and whoever was advising her the extra ability to do what she did, which was create life, and in doing so brought about Osha and May, which were our one person, but two bodies essentially.
Yeah.
So my question is, why does this virgins need proving? Why does Saul need to prove? Because once they got the girl, they seem to have dropped this whole discovery of this virgins on this planet as they raced back to Coruscant, fed the High Council a load of bull about what happened on there, that this little girl started this fire, and they were able to save this Force-sensitive Osha. I just don't understand. This isn't, I know some people are going to be like, oh, you're picking nits. But the words in the dialogue means things. Like, why Brendock, other than, was it a contrivance of the writers? Let's have this final confrontation that happened on Brendock. I think that's cool. I think it's a good backdrop for what happens in this episode. But I think they had a really lame way to explain why they had to go there.
Yeah, he wanted to prove the virgins existed. And he wanted to prove the twins were the direct result of the virgins. So he needed both the twins and he needed them back on the planet to try to, I don't know what, provoke the virgins. Hey, look, the twins are back. The virgins is back.
Like he's poking the virgins.
Yeah. Stay away from that virgins. You don't know where that virgins has been. But yeah, it's really interesting though. Why go back there? I believe that's it. He does say something that those virginses in the Force are also of the highest priority to the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So he might have really just been driven by that discovery. And it also maybe would help explain things to him. I think he's still confused about the things that went down 16 years ago.
He's looking for answers as well.
I think he's looking for some answers. He's trying to understand what happened, why it happened, etc. Because really no one's explained anything to him. Why did she turn into that big black cloud of smoke? What was up with that? We don't know we don't know what was happening. I'd like to think that she was trying to protect May, who was standing there, among the warfare that was ready to break out at any given second. You have Jedi with their sabers drawn. You have witches with their bows and arrows and big stick thingies and whatever they have. So it's violence is about to erupt, and May is just standing there, and she's only 8 years old. So I think the motherly instincts kicked in with that black smoke. But like Saul, he doesn't know what the hell hit him. He doesn't know what happened, really.
That's right. So how can he be fully accountable or fully, held to full account when he was experiencing something completely out of his realm of understanding? He didn't know what was going on. So he's carrying all of this guilt, and there's all this anger. And you would have thought that the writers would have made it a cleaner kill or a clearer kill. It's very foggy. It's very misty, just like Mother Anastasia herself.
Well, yeah. As I said during the after show when we were talking about episode 7, there was nothing to set up that moment. We didn't even know the witches could do that. There should have been something in episode 3 maybe, or earlier in episode 7, that revealed that power of the witches. So we as an audience understand, but we're left in the dark just like Saul is. And we're just reacting just like he did. So we don't have the answers. We only can just guess.
And that's what I'm struggling with. And just one more example as we're talking about this early scene where May is still attached to the bed, still tied down, and Saul was, we can assume, just finished telling her the story that we watched in episode 7. And this one really jumped out at me too. He says, what happened to you, to your coven, was an accident. An accident? It was an accident. Well, then why didn't you tell Osha? Why did you lie to her? Why did you blame it on me? And then Saul turns around and goes, well, you started the fire. You locked everyone in. So on the one hand, he's taking responsibility, but when she starts asking him questions, he starts throwing it back at her. And I guess if we were talking about, a husband and wife having an argument, I've had a lot of dumb arguments with my wife, or my kids. Yeah. You say stupid things. Well, you started it, But this is a Jedi. This is a Jedi Knight. So that's what I mean about, like, the characters are so inconsistent that I have a hard time really finding their core, so that I can talk about them from a really firm place. As soon as I feel like I got my hands around Saul and what motivates him, he just sort of slips like sand, through my fingers. So that's a little challenging.
Yeah, a lot of the characters in the show do this. And we struggle with the fact that the main character is one actress playing two different characters. So it's so easy to just even confuse the characters. Yeah. Oh, when May said, wait, I mean, as Osha said, when Osha, May, it gets confusing then. So you want a little more clarity and a little more straightforwardness from some of these characters. Like FJ said last week, sometimes we need to be spoon-fed a little bit, just a little.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think you want your viewer to be asking bigger questions about your show or your story, as opposed to questioning like almost every scene because it doesn't necessarily jive with the scene before, which is, one of my hangups. By the way, how did you love that? And I got a screen capture of this. I think this is the moment. How did you love Mog's mug when Vernestra is like, you let the senator in the control room? And he's just like, he just gives this as if we thought this guy wasn't wormy enough. I mean, he's like the before when you see like those old videos of the kid getting picked on and the sand kicked in his face on the beach, and then he, starts working out and drinking his milkshakes or whatever, and then he's strong. Like Mog is the before in all of those types of things. But anyway, so he mugged like an idiot. Poor Mog. Mog's mug. But I do want to jump over to this scene with the senator because we talked about this a little bit last week. I thought this scene was fantastic. I loved the dialogue. I loved the questions that Rand Court was asking about the Jedi. I think it provides a ton of interesting backstory and new ways to look at the prequel trilogy. When you start thinking about, you got the Chancellor. He's the one that's dispatching Jedi now to settle a trade dispute. Well, yeah, now they're the Jedi are the bitches of the Republic after this event. But some of the dialogue here I thought was Andorian, like really good dialogue that they wrote for him. I think the Jedi are a massive system of unchecked power, posing as a religion, a delusional cult that claims to control the uncontrollable. You protect an image of goodness and restraint, but it's only a matter of time before one of you snaps. Yeah, this is like very Andor type dialogue. But Jim, this would have been more powerful to me if there would have been examples of the Jedi in the show that weren't that. Because what Rand Court is describing is pretty much the Jedi that we're getting in this show. And I didn't want Rand Court to be right as a fan, as a Star Wars, a lover of all things Jedi. I didn't want him to be right but I had to turn my thoughts to characters like Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Mace Windu and Qui-Gon Jinn, not perfect, certainly, but I wouldn't call them a delusional cult or, unchecked power or any of that. So on the one hand, I loved this take on the Jedi because I thought it was very, very interesting. But on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, but this would have worked better if there would have been something to contrast that stereotype or that image that Rayancourt is projecting here.
Well, yeah, right. It almost is like the show is relying on us to fill in that blank and take what we know about Jedi and challenge us. I mean, I don't know. I never asked for that challenge, really. But, I do like the whole idea of who's watching the watchers. And but it's a politician. And so imagine on good old planet Earth when the local police detective department is investigating a crime or a murder. Do you think they go running to the politicians right away to tell them what they're doing? There's that level of transparency. It almost appears to me that we're already in a place where the Republic government they already have their thumb on the Jedi, and they're really keeping them in check because this is an internal investigation of the murder of a Jedi. Why do they have to inform the politicians? I mean, if the Jedi are the order of law throughout the galaxy, then let that take place before, and how does a politician get involved in something like that?
Yeah, it is interesting because is it a coincidence that Rayancourt, and I'm assuming he has allies in the Republic, are starting to ask these questions about the Jedi? Is it just a coincidence that as these suspicions are arising, that they have this big scandal? Or is he privy to this? I mean, he comes in there like it's clever because Vernestra says, I have the authority to take independent action if there's no larger threat, meaning that it was all Jedi on Jedi action, basically. Right. And he says, well, how can you know? Rayancourt says, how do you know that there's no larger threat? She goes, all the victims were Jedi, and this is when he's got her. Oh, there's more than one victim. There are multiple victims. So he's like Columbo in there. And Vernestra's not very good at this. She says, I'm very close to apprehending every time she's like, oh, but I'm, I'm on the way. We're fixing this. I'm very close to apprehending the suspect. And he's like, is the suspect a Jedi? So is there? Well, very close. Thank you for your concern. And, then it gets into some of that heavier dialogue. And as we were talking about on our show last week, this is very much setting up this sort of like in the X-Men where they were becoming very suspicious of the mutants. We've seen it in other shows like Jim. I think you watch The Boys, where it's superheroes in a more realistic situation where the politicians or people are looking at them. I don't watch the show, but they're suspect of them. So the normies out there, what's that?
Oh no, you have the premise locked down. Yeah, you understand it.
So we've not seen that in Star Wars. That's kind of cool to see how the normies look at these people, and there would be lots that would see them as suspect and see them as weird and not understand them. So that whole setup, I was so on. I was so with and would love to see more of that in Star Wars. I think that's very cool. And then the way they end the confrontation, where he says to Vernestra, he says, "Good luck." Oh no, what is it that you say?
Oh God!
May the Force be with you. So I don't think I've ever heard that line delivered with sarcasm in Star Wars before.
Oh, I guess
until now.
This guy, he's just such a pandering. So, oh, what is it you say again? Let me see. Oh, yes, yeah. Like he does it. He knows exactly what it is.
Yeah, right. This guy's a total ass. Yeah, he's a total ass.
But yeah, he was very interested in the notion that it could be a Jedi out there killing fellow Jedi, because that plays right into his foreshadowing, his speculation that a Jedi could snap. And it's almost like he's in tune with the Force somehow. Would that be interesting? If we find out like Ravencroft is the Sith Lord. You know,
no, Ravencroft is the voice of Tony the Tiger. This is Ray and Court.
Oh, you're right. Whatever.
Thurl. The great Thurl Ravencroft.
You're right. I stand corrected. So this guy, he'll always be Senator Ravencroft to me. I don't care. I just don't care.
Well, anyway, so I did like this scene a lot. When you go back though and you look at the dialogue and you read the lines that Ray and Court is giving to the Jedi, you almost start to wonder if that is also Leslie Headland's belief, because that is the way the Jedi are portrayed in this series. Exactly what Ray and Court is saying. So I don't know. I'm not a mind reader, but you couple that with some of the things that she said in public and sort of projecting herself into the show through Chimere. That's her proxy, as she has said. She said she doesn't typically write herself into shows, but Chimere was an exception to that. She definitely identifies with him. And if there's a window for her into the series, it's Chimere. And obviously he's no fan of the Jedi. So the series does feel very anti-Jedi to me as a whole.
Yeah, well, that's a reflection of Leslie's feelings about the patriarchy, yada, yada. You know, I mean, notice when Ravencourt is addressing Vernestra and he talks about a Jedi snapping, he only uses the he pronoun. He says him. Who's going to stop him? Why does it have to be a him? We're seeing more female Jedi in this show than we've ever seen before. Why not him or her? You guys want to play the pronoun game? Let's play. Let's go.
No, but you're right. He says, "Who will be?" He goes, and if that happens, you know, someone snaps, a Jedi snaps, who will be strong enough to stop him? Because I immediately thought to Anakin.
Because a female Jedi could never stop in Leslie Headland's Star Wars. She could never snap. When I say stop, I meant snap.
Snap.
Maybe I should stop. You know.
Yeah. Anyway. So it was sort of that scene for me was sort of the best of times and the worst of times. Let's talk about something really interesting here, and that is the appearance of Darth Plagueis in the show. This made my list on the good side of things. I did like this. I thought that it had to happen. I don't know how to take this, though, so I want to throw this out to you, Jim, and throw this out to the audience. Did you interpret Plagueis' presence on Brendok to indicate that...
He wasn't on Brendok. That was that unknown planet. That was the unknown planet. It was not Brendok. Remember, they were taking off to go to Brendok, and that's when old Plagueis gets revealed.
Oh,
so
okay.
Your theory would be, well, if he was on Brendok.
Okay. Here's my, I will slightly rephrase my question because I did get confused, by the way, especially because it felt like, that whole, and I was watching this on the beach in vacation. So, but it felt like there were multiple times they were taking off, like, with Saul and Osha, like they crashed and then I felt like they flew again after that. I don't know. I got lost. I'll be honest with you. I got lost because all the freaking planets in this show look the same to me.
Right. They use
the environments look the same.
That's a big fail of the show is its lack of creative environments.
Terrible. But here's the question. Plagueis looming in the background. Does it imply that he has had a hand in the events or that he is just now seeing what's already been happening unbeknownst to him, and now he's interested.
Yeah, I tend to think that Chimere is operating independently, and he's taken on this apprentice, and I don't think he necessarily wants Plagueis to even know. And Plagueis is watching from, he's watching, he's being very shadowy as he's watching. And
Jimmy Max got the action figure. Look at this. It was
How
creeping
dramatic
into the camera. I love
that was a very dramatic reveil.
That's a great figure. And by the way, Jim, the value of that figure has skyrocketed on the aftermarket, on the secondary markets ever since the episode aired. It's actually been a pretty hot action figure up. Jimmy Mac gives it a little kiss on his little head.
He's a moon. He's a moon.
His little moony head. But do you get what I'm asking here? Is he at all the source of any of these events, or is he a bystander like we are? And he's like, oh, this is very interesting. What did I find here? And you're saying that Chimere is operating independently. He's not working for Plagueis. You don't believe.
Right. And then Plagueis is getting tipped off now to this vergence in the Force, and he's going to eventually investigate it himself. That, to me, makes a better story than Plagueis orchestrating everything and pulling the strings on everyone. At this point of the story, you want to see Plagueis grow into that.
Now, I'm with you. The only thing that I feel that we need Plagueis for is to have been the one to lead Mother Anastasia and Mother Coral to Brendok. Because remember, they met someone mysterious and they were led to Brendok, and then their lives changed. The twins were born, and all of this prosperity started to occur within the coven. They started to come back. So
I don't recall that, where they said that someone showed them the way.
Yeah.
I should have watched those Koganada episodes, damn it.
Yeah, see what happens when you go no Ganada?
no Ganada is missing some of the story here, but they were on the brink of extinction, but they were blessed by a miracle, the twins. I'm going back to my old notes from episode 3. The children, first witches born since their exile, they were hunted, persecuted, and forced into hiding, all by someone who would consider their power dark and unnatural. That's what she says, forced into hiding.
Right.
All by someone who would consider our power dark, unnatural. Well, who would that be? Who would that be?
Well, I'm not talking about the person that pushed them into hiding. I'm talking about the person that, I swear, in that dialogue in episode 3 between Anastasia and Coral, there is an allusion to a person that gave them the information and sort of led them to Brendok.
That I don't recall.
But anyway, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but Plagueis showing up, it's either a gratuitous cameo. Yeah. I think it's gratuitous if he's not somehow part of this plot. It makes no sense to me why he's there.
Or he's just an emerging character that they hope to exploit a little more in season 2.
But why is he there? If he's not because part of this action.
Well, he's a Sith Lord, and Chimere is his apprentice.
Well,
and
but you were saying he was acting independently.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you can do that, right? Without, the Sith Lord knowing.
Okay. I think I misunderstood you. Okay, I got you. So in the same way that Vader in The Force Unleashed had Starkiller, unbeknownst to Palpatine, he was still Palpatine's apprentice, but he didn't know about it. I got you. Okay, so you're not discounting the idea that Plagueis could be Chimere's master.
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
No, I think he is the master.
Got it. Okay.
Absolutely. And
But he's
Chimere-
keeping an eye on his apprentice saying, hey, you're hanging around with this chick and now you got your own apprentice. Now I got to start worrying.
Well, Chimere does say when he's walking with May on Kofar after they landed, he says they're talking about the master, which is Chimere.
Right.
He's talking about himself.
Right.
And he says, you know how he likes to collect people? Well, he's talking about himself. So Chimere is someone he keeps people around him. So to be able to train one of those people under the nose of Darth Plagueis might be simpler than you think. If he always has people around him, he can pick up an apprentice and Plagueis will think it's just another social call. Well, he collects people, so
Right.
I mean, we've only seen him with Osha and May, but
He's a social butterfly. He's very, very outgoing guy. He's always hanging with people.
yeah,
Yeah,
his
hiding
door's
in
always
plain
open.
sight.
His cave is always open.
Osha does say to Chimere that she thinks he's fair. You catch that line? She says, that seems, we'll go together or we don't go at all. That seems fair. Did I give you the impression that I was a fair person, says Chimere. Yes, you did. Yes, you evil thing, you. You are fair. So this is, again, part of that, the bad guy's the good guy. And I know that we walked into this series understanding that this was going to be from the perspective of the Sith. Understood. But I feel like there's a way that you can do that without going all in and making the person whose point of view or the point of view that you're saying you're telling this from to be the ultimate good in the galaxy, or the fair ones, or the reasonable ones. So just these little clues.
Well, yeah, it's interesting how that gets painted in this series, because there's a firm line between good and bad in Star Wars.
Yes.
And to fall to the dark side is the biggest failure a Star Wars character who's connected to the Force can possibly make. It's a failure.
A tragedy.
But now the thing with Chimere and the girl, and she calls him fair. Fair, yeah, fair to who? He snapped poor Yord's neck. Just snapped
he just got done murdering what?
Yeah,
a day ago, 2 days ago, all
yeah,
her friends.
And she was sweet on that little Jackie, and he pierced her 3 times.
Yeah,
with his saber.
Yeah. That's areas where I struggle. Now, here's something that he laid on us that I thought was very interesting. As they're walking, and he's not giving up, tempting her, seducing her. He says, Osha, you should be trained. Would you ever consider? And she says, no. And he says, last chance. She says, I told you I'm not your sister. I'm not my sister. He says, you're definitely not. May made that deal without even thinking about it. And he says that as if, Jim, it's a put down. Like, as if her being willing so quickly to join him made her less desirable, made her maybe less powerful. So the question I have is, does the power come from the turn, the rejection of the light side and turning to evil, where May always was a little bit evil? So,
oh, I see.
Is it that's where the real power and rage comes from the rejection of the good? Because I think the way that the twins were created, May was the dark side, Osha was the lighter side.
Yeah.
She becomes so powerful that she bleeds the saber red, And the only difference between May and Osha is that Osha was the light side. She was the symbol of the light side, and she turns. So then that made me think, is that why characters like Dooku and Anakin and now Osha are so powerful? Because it's the turn that makes them more powerful.
It could be that. Also, let's not neglect what happens at the very beginning of this episode. She's wearing that dark side helmet.
Mm-hmm.
And the helmet itself can be a vergence in the dark side. And that might be something that fuels Chimere. And that could definitely be something that added a little bit of dark side mojo into Osha's game. I'd like to analyze that part because Chimere's eyes turn inky black and he goes into that weird space.
Yeah,
that weird
he does.
dimension.
That's right.
And that's the witch magic.
Right.
Or is that the dark side? And the witches are just tapping into the dark side and they call it a thread. I mean,
wow, I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that, him going into that witchy world. But you're right to ask, is that really the witchy world, or is that the world of the dark, of the Sith? Or because that made me think that Mother Coral was going to be the big bad behind all of this, which was one of the theories. Because it was going back to that witch phenomenon. And we don't know what happened to Coral.
No, she just disappeared.
Right.
Did she die? Did she die with all the other witches? Would Mother A have died with all the other witches if she stayed alive?
Yeah.
Or was it just that group of witches who were all sort of, conjuring up the Force to possess Kelnaka?
I sort of got the impression that was all of them. Like they were all working towards that. Because that's why, everyone was dead, which, by the way, poor Saul, all he did was stab some smoke. It was Indara that cast those witches out of Kelnaka so forcefully that she killed them all.
She had no problem with it either.
Right. And we have there's no evidence to make us believe that she lost a night of sleep over it.
No, as a matter of fact, she covered it up. She's the one who created that story about the fire and all the witches dying in it. And she fed that to Saul. Also, she is the one who suggested to the Jedi Council that Osha be expelled from the order before Osha voluntarily walked away. Because Osha, her claim was Osha cannot maintain her emotions, and she gets angry too much. And I think she was just using that to get Osha out of there.
Mm-hmm.
To cover up her story. I think Indara really is the architect of the big lie that goes on with the Jedi.
But Saul gets all the blame. Literally, later on in the episode, all the blame is laid on poor Saul.
Because he loves Osha.
Yeah.
He loves her. And in a paternal way. And he tries to say it before she starts force choking him. He gets out I love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was an interesting scene as well. Because so Saul is really damaged goods. Yeah. I think. I mean, it's just because he's so driven by emotion. And that is a dangerous ingredient to put in a Jedi stew, is to be really fueled that way. We saw it with Anakin. But Saul's too good to slip to the dark side. He's too good. He is the perfect Star Wars example of good guys finishing last. Master Saul. He really was. And poor guy, but I don't like the fact that he agrees, says, it's okay, you can kill me now. I don't like that. That does not sit well with me at all.
It doesn't me at all. It doesn't me at all. I don't. That is one of the biggest questions I have about this. You know, he kills a smoke monster. He had no way of knowing what was going to happen with that. But all of a sudden, you know, now he's this premeditated murderer who is so riddled with guilt that he justifies his own murder. He just gives up. Yes.
Yeah.
Kill me. Kill me. And he has to know, Jim, as a Jedi Master, he has to know that act of her killing him is her turning to the dark side. So not only is he saying it's okay to kill me, in essence, he's saying it's okay to turn to the dark side.
Yeah, that's his legacy.
Right.
That's his legacy. Osha, the dark sider. You know, I mean, that's a sad story, really. And it truly is. It's not a tragedy for Chimere or for Osha or for even May. It's all Saul. He's the guy who really suffers the true tragedy in this story. And what bothers me is that he accepts it and allows it.
Yeah.
And that's Torben 2.0. He's basically taking the poison.
But I wasn't I wasn't expecting that because Torben was lame and Saul wasn't up to this point. I didn't have a lot of hope for old Torbs.
Torben. Torben, he had a bright future. It just got derailed. He was going places, kid. I'm gonna tell you, he was going places.
There before this scene, I think we need to talk a little bit about, you know, the whole confrontation. Well, the lightsaber battle, by the way. I don't know if Jim, if you have anything you want to say about that between Saul and Chimere. Again, great. I thought great stuff. Continues I think the legacy of good saber battling in this show. If there's any area of this show that I give an A+ to, it's that the lightsaber battles I thought were fantastic. Absolutely. They were emotional. And I thought they struck a good balance between, there was some of the, like, what do they call that, wire work or whatever. There's a little bit of that going on.
Yeah.
It wasn't over the top. There's just some good old fashioned clashing sabers going on that I thought really stood out. And kudos.
Clearly, we're seeing the best saber dueling of the entire Disney era on this show.
Yep,
on this show.
I agree.
Now, does it best the Duel of the Fates and the genius work of Nick Gillard and all of them? That's open to debate. And the thing is they are great saber duels, but the environments in which they take place in are really sort of lame compared to the Duel of the Fates in that feed generator room and all of that stuff. It starts in the hangar and moves, and there's catwalks and they're jumping and stuff. They don't do any of those Jedi flips or anything in this show.
You're so
I don't know
right.
why they don't do that.
You're so right.
They're more acrobatic. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the Lucas environments, whether it go back to Cloud City, I mean, how freaking exciting is that Cloud City saber battle when they're hiding from each other at various points? Yeah. You see a little bit more of that in Return of the Jedi, and then, as you mentioned, the Theed in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and then Episode 3, Battle of Heroes. They're jumping around on those platforms over the lava and all that.
I mean, come on, forget about it.
There's no contest, but these jump out because the saber duels have been a little lackluster. Even with Kenobi, as great of an emotional climax as that is, with the helmet getting cut and you see Hayden's face and all that. I mean, it's in my probably my top 5 of all time Star Wars moments. I love it so much. But the battle itself is leaves some to be desired. So kudos to whoever it was. I have been meaning to wanting to go look through the long list of credits and see who the stunt coordinator was or who the fight choreographer was, because they did a great job throughout this series. Awesome job. Yeah, and they should do all of them from now on.
Now, they were great saber duels. I was dissatisfied with the saber duels in pretty much all of the sequel trilogy. none of them really had any sort of rhythm or poetry to them like these do. Even, well, the Rise of Skywalker was kind of cool when they were jumping with those waves. All right, I like that. Now that's good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times the environments really add a lot to it. And the saber duels, as great as they are in the show, the lack of creativity with where the saber duels are taking place is something that takes them a notch, definitely a few
Jim's
notches.
got to subtract a
below.
couple of points off the
I'm
saber
sorry.
duel score for environment.
Because we do it on the scorecard. Yep. That's how we
I
break
love
them all
the
down.
moves, but you know what? The environment is going to take it from a 9.8 to a 7.9. I'm afraid.
Yeah, and that's very true. That's very true. I mean, look at the Kenobi show. Obi-Wan and Vader reunite, and they have a saber duel for the first time since Mustafar, and it takes place in an environment that looks like the quarry that is literally a half mile away from my house.
So exotic.
I don't want that. Yeah, there's no exotic quality to that whatsoever. Give me some empty sand dunes or something. Don't drop me off in the middle of the quarry. They do all this blasting all the time. It's ruining our infrastructure here in town. There's flooding on Brainerd, Swank.
Oh my God, on Brainerd Road? No.
And they had to close Joliet Road permanently, Swank. The damn quarry. They destroyed a whole road.
God,
So,
well, you know, you need Deborah Chow out there to get the
Get Deborah Chow.
Get Deborah Chow on it. She knows how to handle herself around a quarry. Okay, so some of the dialogue here between May and Saul and Chimere, very interesting. There was one line that I couldn't help but think that it's right out of the sequel trilogy, somehow Palpatine's Return, and it was, I don't know how your mother did it.
Oh, yeah, well.
But it has something to do with this vengeance on the planet.
But that's why I think, that's why I think, you know, to go back to the question you asked at the very beginning of this conversation, why go back to Brendok?
Mm-hmm.
Saul is really searching for answers here.
Okay, I'll buy that.
It's beyond what happened 16 years ago or what didn't happen. It's beyond all of that. He says in an earlier episode, he has to go back and face his past. But I think the thing that is his prime motivator is to discover the source of this virgins that may have created these twins, which I'd have to say that's what did it. That's how these witches, they tapped into that stuff. But how did they do it? They did it by using the dark side of the Force, clearly.
Yeah, so he says, I believe she used the Force to create you and Osha. Do you have any idea what kind of power that is? In the history of the galaxy, very few have been that powerful. So that tells us that in canonical Star Wars, even before Darth Plagueis the Wise, that it has been known creating life was rare, but it has been done before, but very few. Very few. In the history of the galaxy, very few have been that powerful. So Anakin, the twins, they are in some line of others that have had this sort of immaculate Force conception.
Yeah, well, Plagueis had to be chasing something. You know, he didn't wake up one morning and goes, you know what I think I'm going to do this weekend? I'm going to discover the secret to everlasting life. Immortality, baby. You know, he had to have some sort of hint or clue that it's possible to create life in the Force. And then via doing that, he can add life to his own or something. You know, it's hard to really understand exactly where he's coming from, but there had to be something that happened to motivate him to chase that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the occurrence of the twins.
Yeah, okay. So if that's the case, okay, that's interesting. So if he's following, and I misidentified the planet that Plagueis was on. He was on the unknown planet where Chimere has his base, basically his hut.
Yeah.
And
Baldemic is what they called it in the Plagueis book.
Baldemic?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I'm saying that right. I believe I'm saying that right. But I mean, the only reason why
that's the same planet?
Yes, because the cortosis veins running through the cave. That's where Plagueis would go to mine that stuff.
All right. The judges are saying Baldemnik.
Demnik.
2 words. Baldemnik is likely the planet there. But at any rate, so if he's following Chimere there, then we it's reasonable to think that he's also following them to Brendok, that he's watching all of this unfold.
Or he's just on Baldemic, if that is the planet. I mean, he's just there.
Right.
And he's sort of just like creeping around, spying on his apprentice.
But as you were talking about, he has to perhaps get tipped off that these twins have this immaculate Force origin. And that could be what starts him down the road of... Because I looked at it like, in order for this to make sense, it had to have been Plagueis that planted the seed of how to do this with, no pun intended.
Plant the seed.
That Plagueis planted the seed with Mother Anastasia in a strictly platonic way. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
But no, I don't want to beat that point into the ground too much. But we got to make sense for why Plagueis showed up. So Saul says she created life, and Osha doesn't care, or excuse me, May doesn't care. You killed our mother. And he says, I wanted him to say, I killed a smoke monster. I didn't know it was your mother. It was a smoke monster. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Your sister looked like, or you looked like you were about ready to be killed or disappear. But he just says, I did. I was protecting you. It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. So why didn't you tell the Jedi, without me, there was no proof that you were created in this way? I don't understand what does May not being there have to do with the murder and the cover-up? If it was the right thing to do, why didn't you tell the Jedi? And he says, well, without May, there was no proof you were created this way. That still doesn't explain why he didn't tell the Jedi. You can still tell the Jedi the events that unfolded. And
so he's still shoveling BS. Essentially,
I think so.
He's still sticking with the game plan. This late in the game, he's sticking with it. He's a loyal soldier. This guy to Indara. He's playing the hand she dealt him.
Yeah.
And why did she get Soul to go along with it? She says, well, after all this girl's been through, you can't just tell her, the truth. And so hiding that fact, trying to protect Osha is what's ultimately blown up in his face.
Yes, because Indara and Saul both believe that if the Jedi knew what really happened, that they weren't going to accept Osha into the Jedi. That she was too old.
Yes.
And if they were going to reject her, then she'll have lost everything. So Indara's like, at least we can create a little lemonade out of these lemons for this kid.
Yes.
So we'll just tell a fib here.
And they thought May was dead. They did think May was dead.
They thought that all the loose ends were tied up.
Yeah. Yeah. So they could wing any story they want to. And that's not cool. Do they get the death penalty for that though? I mean, I don't think
know
the
what the penalty
Jedi
is.
I can see it. Sure, this is a story told from the Sith perspective, as they say, but also, you do see it from the Jedi perspective as well. And I think that you can see very clearly that these guys, it was just a bad situation that just got worse, all due to a lot of misunderstanding and lack of communication. And Saul did what a Jedi should never do. he gave into his emotions. In the case of killing Anastasia, he gave into fear, clearly, because he lashed out with his weapon. Whether or not he thought he was under attack, I mean, we could get into his head, and he's standing there, and all of a sudden she turns into black smoke. He goes, "What the hell?" You know, he just, it's not a cool situation to be in. And he might have done it out of self-preservation. He could have been acting out in defense, but it was ultimately fear which dictated his action. And it was a gut reaction. It was a knee-jerk reaction. And it was a very terrible reaction at the end of the day when he's killing the mother of these two kids. So,
yeah, I did think that it was kind of cool that this whole episode got set up with Osha telling Chimere that she had a vision when she had the helmet on and she saw May. She said she had her hand outstretched. She was killing Saul. Little did she know at the time that her Force vision was of herself, wearing May's clothes with her hand outstretched, killing Saul.
Well, they say the two are the same person.
They're the same person, right? So that does help, I think, explain a lot of the weird, like, force connection or force timing or whatever you want to say that they had with their, you know, their collective memories. That's why in the beginning she only saw her as a child during these moments. Some of that stuff sort of makes sense from that idea that they literally are the same person split into two. I still think of Captain Kirk getting divided in that transporter accident, but
oh, Riker. Wasn't it Riker?
Riker? Right. It was Riker too. I think they did it with Riker, right?
What was his name? Like Todd Riker?
Thomas Riker.
The other thing, you know, with them being with us, we can look at them and say, okay, they're the same person, but they're two different people, but they're the same. So, I mean, that almost helps us sweep the odd character motivations and personality flip-flops right under the rug, where it's like, oh, well, she's not herself today. She's May. And then oh, she's Osha today. And the two of them, they don't know what's hitting them. Yeah. They're just like, oh, today I feel like Osha.
Wow, it does. I mean, it's kind of a weak way to as you say, throw it under the rug, but it does work. Yeah.
You know, whatever keeps us sane as an audience, you know?
Yeah. Can we talk about the bleeding saber here?
Yes, that was one of the cooler parts.
Yeah. This was a rejected concept of George Lucas that was, I think, up until certainly after a lot of the conversations with certainly with Hasbro and some of the toy manufacturers, the decision was made to not go through with this. But at one point, Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber was going to turn from blue to red. Yeah. They even made a color-changing lightsaber, the original Anakin Skywalker figure. I think Hasbro got frustrated and they didn't know what, so they packed in two lightsabers with that first action figure. But there was a color-changing lightsaber. I don't know too much about the legends or the expanded universe that explains exactly what this is, but and I'm not one to suggest that every cool thing that they come up with you have to sort of retroactively give it to Anakin or Luke. I understand that things change, but I don't understand necessarily how May was able to make this happen, yet Anakin, arguably the most powerful, one of the most powerful Jedi in the history of the Order, it didn't happen with him. I don't know why.
All right. I have an explanation. Number one, it was Osha who did it, not May.
Oh, sorry.
No, I told you that's a struggle with the show. You don't know who you're talking about half the time. So thank God they're the same person. So now you can't, you know what? Maybe it was May, Swank. I don't know.
Can I just
call
it
Osha?
Moshe?
Maybe it was May. I don't know who could have been.
Moshe?
Nosha. Moshe. Yeah, right. Moshe. That works. But okay, so here's the best way you can kind of retcon this sort of thing, or con this thing. They say that this is newer canon now. This didn't exist in the old expanded universe, nor in George Lucas's Star Wars ownership. This happened post Disney acquisition, where it's been said that a Darksider can grab a kyber crystal and make it bleed, like by holding it and by infusing it with the dark side of the Force. You make it bleed, and that's why the blade is red. In the case of Anakin, he's using his saber that is fully functional and not damaged. In the case of Osha, she's using Soul's saber, which became damaged when May attacked Soul, and she threw Soul's saber, and as soon as it hit the ground, it split open. He must make
So the kyber crystal was exposed. Is that what you're saying?
So the crystal is exposed.
Okay.
And so she's actually on her palm, she's connecting with the crystal itself. There's nothing standing in the way, no lightsaber hilt. So she's then able to infuse it, and it starts bleeding, and you see it. And it's impossible for the story for Anakin's saber to turn blue, and the reason, or to turn red. And the reason why George probably avoided doing that is because when Obi-Wan Kenobi presents the saber to Luke in A New Hope, as soon as he ignited it, it would have been a red blade.
Right. Good explanation. Yeah. No, that helps. You're right. Okay, so it wasn't necessarily an indication of the level of power. It was more had to do with the fact that the saber was damaged, the crystal was exposed. She's infusing it as she's turning to the dark side. She's infusing the crystal with the dark side.
Yes.
Okay, I buy that. Another thing that made the show for me a little challenging to keep straight was there were a lot of, I feel like, beats in the story that were repetitive. How many times did we see this scene? How many times did the two of them hug and cry? To the point where I didn't know who was crying or who wasn't crying, or who was right or who was wrong, who was angry, who wasn't. So that is something that by the time we get to this, I'd seen these two bawl their eyes out and hug each other multiple times. And it had no impact on me. If this would have been the only time they would have embraced and cried, I might have actually felt something. But it was like, ladies, every episode you're hugging and crying. And then every episode was Saul. I will tell you. I will tell the Jedi. I will tell you what happened. And it's just like, dude, by the time he got to it, I'm like, you know what? I don't care anymore, Saul. I don't care. I just don't care anymore. So
I wanted to know, damn it.
No, I wanted to know. But the point was that, they did this a lot in this show, to where waiting a week in between episodes. Now, I don't know if it hit you the same way on your rewatches, the way it was hitting me watching it every week. Did these kinds of things help? Or were they helped by the fact that you were watching it?
No, when you binge them, you notice that, Osha sits up startled a lot, 5 times. 5 times over the course of 8 episodes. She does a lot of that. With the rewatch also, you start noting some acting performances stand out a little bit more. And you also notice that Amanda Stenberg is largely emotionless. Through many scenes, she has just this same expressionless look on her face.
Emotionless Stoneberg.
You talk about these scenes where they're hugging and crying. I welcome them because you're actually seeing an acting performance. Other times, she's just standing where she needs to stand and reading the words off the page. She has zero expression a lot of times. I don't know what Lucasfilm's fascination is with certain actresses who do not reveal any expression. That Aaron Kellyman from the Solo and the Willow series is a perfect example. And at times watching Amandla, I'm sorry, when I binged it, I just felt like she was turning in some really poor performances. The kid actors sucked. Vern was awful and emotionalist. And I'm sorry, but Amandla she's just not lead role material in my book. She lacks range and lacks an edge. I never believed, not once, her character could actually be deadly or lethal. She has the same blank look on her face at all times. She doesn't act with her eyes. She doesn't furrow her brow. She's got these big eyes and big eyebrows. Use them. Zero expression. It's like she got Botox in his forehead and can't move her muscles at all. I found she had the same facial expressions when she had the mask removed, and she just breathes heavily. Just same look. She discovers Soul has arrived on Brendok. Same look on her face, motionless. When Soul tells me that she and her sister are the same, no reaction, totally emotionless. When Osha force chokes Saul, give us some angry eyes. Nothing, emotionless. Just emotionless. There's just, and then it's even worse when you watch with the descriptive audio track, and it says things like, Osha reveals conflict in her face. Her hard expression softens. You see no evidence of this all happening. May stares in awe. Same expressionless look. Osha appears visibly shaken. Same expressionless look on her face. May watches with concern. No expression. Same. I'm looking. I'm like going. I'm staring right at the screen. Breathing heavy is not great acting, and that's what Amandla does to convey emotion. And occasionally she just screams. Why do female characters in Star Wars now all have this primal scream whenever they go? Look at them all. Rey. Ah! Bo-Katan. Ah! Reva. Ah! Osha and May. Ah! What is that? Why does Lucasfilm do this?
It's so true. God, you're right. It is so true.
This is primal scream. How many times does Rey do that? She does it in the Last Jedi.
Well, Daisy always has the teeth. Like
no, that is just like.
Well, let's not forget Finn. Finn lets out a couple of.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's actual dialogue,
right? Well, that's
crying
true.
out loud. Those are words from a page.
Dang. No, that's true. So this sort of wraps up with them on the with more of this temptation or a seduction, which I guess there's really no need for it here. I think she's already, kind of bought into Chimere, Osha at this point. Oh, she does say, "I'm sorry I started that fire."
Oh, jeez.
Like it's all
late for that.
Be just wiped off. I'm sorry.
Kind of late for that. I would have said, and you burned up my book of doodles too. That wasn't cool, sis.
So, here's character motivation. So after all this happens, she's just murdered Saul and bled a saber red.
Yes.
She says, well, we can just explain this all to the Jedi. We'll just explain it to them. We'll explain what Saul did. They're going to have to understand, And Chimere's like, even after everything, you're going to put your faith in the Jedi? So, she thinks it's all going to be okay? Oh, it's all good now. I just murdered Saul. The truth is out. We'll just explain it to the Jedi. What in the world? I don't get that at all. Again, either is she evil? Did she join the dark side? Is she a believer or is she not? So then what really puts her over the edge, and she finally agrees to go with Chimere, is because it's going to he offers cover for May. It's almost like Osha sacrifices herself to the dark side to save May.
Right. But
let my sister go and I will train with you, she says. Let my sister go.
But so are we led to assume that Chimere was going to kill May if she stuck around? Why the negotiation? What's the point of the negotiation? I'll go with you if you let my sister free. It almost implies there's a scene missing where Chimere says, you need to come and train with me. Well, what about my sister May? Well, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to kill her yourself, Right. Yeah, something like that. Anything. You're going to have to prove you're loyal to me first by killing May. That would have been great. That would have added a whole level of drama and tension. But she negotiates this deal. I'll go with you if you let my sister go. But there's no foundation for that negotiation whatsoever.
Right.
We're just left sitting there going, why didn't they both go with Chimere?
That's what I'm wondering. And then I'm like, oh, there has to be a sacrifice. And so she's sacrificing herself, but then I was like, but how is she sacrificing herself, or how is this some sort of bargain when she already committed herself to the dark side by killing her master and bleeding a saber? I'd say you're in the club.
And she's already shown interest in Chimere as a hunk. So, I mean, we noted that there's certain sparks there. She could have killed him earlier, and she doesn't.
Right.
So there's always been a tolerance for Chimere and a borderline interest in him. And so, I mean, why it wasn't to me a big stretch that she decided to go with him to train. That was no surprise or shock, but I just didn't understand the negotiation. Why didn't May just go with them? Let my sister go free and I'll go with you and train. Why can't both of you go train with him? How about that? I'm sure Chimere would have been down for that. A little three's company,
I
a little
Janet Adam, I think, sums it up for himself pretty well. I wish I could be mind wiped. Adam, I
it was only that easy.
I disagree with you completely. Okay, so the sacrifice, and it goes from there because May is kind of cool with this, and she's like, "Oh, you're going to do what you were meant to do, and I won't stop you this time." How she stopped her from becoming a Jedi, or tried to stop her from going off with the Jedi. But now you're going to be doing what you meant to be, an evil person seeking an insatiable quest and appetite for power and wreak havoc throughout the galaxy. Like, they pass this off as if she's like going off to college, but she's going off to be an evil apprentice.
Yeah.
What am I missing with this?
You're not missing anything. As I said, there is no greater failure for a Star Wars character who's connected with the Force than to fall to the dark side. And maybe they're trying to present. Now, listen, Jason, I know you enjoyed these movies, but I never saw those Twilight vampire movies.
Okay.
Right.
Yep,
but
yep.
I get a sense that that sort of vibe fuels this show, where with Twilight, I assume you get all wound up in the romance and the lifestyle of these vampires, and they're like Chimere. They just want to do their thing, and they don't want anybody to get in their way. But we as an audience know that they're evil and deadly, and they're murderers who drink blood. I'm only assuming this from the Twilight franchise because, as I say, I've never seen a single minute of that show.
You're close. Yeah.
But so I get a feeling like this is Twilight with a Star Wars skin on it. kind of in a way. Those are the demands that are being made from us as an audience to accept these evildoers, the antagonists as the actual protagonists, and to somehow root for them and savor their victories. Is that what's going on here? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a leap after nearly 50 years of us rooting for the Jedi and the good guys and the guardians of peace and justice, to all of a sudden a flip like that. Now, to your point, Jim, like how easy, if George wanted to, in the height of, I mean, the prequels came out, that was before, the Twilight stuff and all that. But, he casts this really great looking young kid as Anakin Skywalker, this dashing, James Dean type, which is what George was going after. How easy would it have been for him to try and take the audience with Anakin on the journey and make him be the sexy, evil bad guy? But he didn't do that. He made Anakin's fall tragic. He killed children. He lost his temper with the person that he loved the most, and in his mind, killed her. And then he became terribly deformed and all of that. He showed what happens essentially when you make a deal with the devil, which he did with and Palpatine. But he could have gone the other way and been like, no, he's going to be this sexy, swashbuckling evil guy that all the girls are going to love, and all the guys want to be. But he didn't do that because that had been the easy thing, I think.
That would have been the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is, purposefully trying to present us a Star Wars story from the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
And whether or not that actually works and appeals to Star Wars fans, or does it stick the finger to the actual fundamental backbone of what Star Wars actually is? Is it the anti-Star Wars? I won't go that far. I won't go that far because I actually halfway enjoyed a lot of this show, but I also struggle with what motivates this story. I struggle a great deal with that. And, they tried to present us with a Kylo Ren who we were supposed to sympathize with, but the way I looked at Ren was different. It was different. Yeah, he killed his father. Okay. Yeah, that sucks. But he did get redeemed at the end.
He did.
And he ended up giving his life for Rey and the future of the Jedi. So he went through that entire arc. By the time we know what Vader has done, we know he killed children. We know he became an evil oppressor who kept the entire galaxy under his shoe heel. And he was just a bad guy. And his terrible deeds all manifested themselves physically on him. And you can see how it was eating him away. He became more machine than man. After all that, when Luke appeals to him at the moment where Luke is facing certain death and Anakin rises up from out of the ashes of Anakin, destroys the Emperor, and then passes away to become one with the Force. At the very end, when we're looking at him, we are meant to be sympathetic for him. We're meant to feel his redemption.
Right.
So you have to go, through the wheels of fire to emerge on the other side, redeemed and cleansed.
Oh, you have to earn it. In other words,
you have to earn it.
Now,
to flip it on its other upside down, and you look at it as a story being told from the Sith perspective where they're victorious, and we're supposed to bask in their victory and support it. That doesn't work in Star Wars. And so somebody would say to me, oh, well, what about that scene in Rogue One when Darth Vader comes rushing down the hallway and he kills all those rebels? yeah, we thrilled to the spectacle and the excitement of seeing Darth Vader do what Darth Vader does, because we've always known that about him, but we never saw it. And it's exciting. But at our core, we're never actually like proud of him for killing all of those rebels. No,
right.
we don't.
No, we're not rooting for him.
No, we never root for him or the Empire.
Right.
And the show is asking us to take these Sith and to love them like people love Bella and Albert or whatever those two are from
You're right.
Twilight.
Bella and Edward, or no, you're absolutely right. That is what she's trying to do here, and I think that for me, as a Star Wars fan, I'm not clutching my pearls. I just think that it's asking way too much of us. And, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because like I said, there was some interesting stuff throughout this series, which we'll get into. By the way, do have the phone number up on the screen, 708-866-1737. We're going to get to your calls. We're also going to get to your super chats. Thank you very much for being patient. All the phone lines are jammed right now, so we've got a full switchboard. Tyler, our call screener, has been very busy. But if you, as soon as we let go of one caller, another line opens up, so you can kind of jump in perhaps that way. At the end here, Jim, we've got the Vernestra explaining things to, and yeah, there's a scene with her. The scene with her and the mind wiped May doesn't really give you all that much. Probably the only big thing is that this is the closest that Vernestra comes to admitting that Chimere was her former pupil. Mm-hmm. She says, I want you to help me find someone a pupil of mine before he turned to evil.
Right. And also, so it does set the stage for a season 2, where May is now taking the role of Osha, and Vernestra is taking the role of Master Saul. And much like Saul was using Osha to find May, now Vernestra is using May to find Osha, and more specifically
Chimere. She doesn't. Well, that's what's interesting. She doesn't say anything about the need to find the girl.
No, but you'll find the two of them together, and
right.
I think she's banking on that.
Yeah,
and that's why she wants to use, and also May, obviously, before she was mind wiped, had a lot of information on Chimere and where he lived, everything about him. So
if they just end up undoing this mind wipe, in a second season, I think that's going to be a little weak. I mean, it's like, what's the point? Because she obviously feels that she still has some value. She can help lead her to Chimere and Osha. So that's why the scene it was just very contradictory to me. But what we see here in the end is she lays out the case to the senators. I'm assuming this is a committee, this oversight committee that Rayan Guildenstern, whatever his name was talking about, and she lays it all at the feet of Saul. His reputation completely destroyed. He was a kind, brilliant, compassionate man, and he did a terrible thing. What terrible thing? Well, he killed the mother of the twins, and then when the truth was coming out, he killed his accomplices to maintain the cover story. I mean, she really throws him under the bus, I guess is an understatement. She throws him on the old funeral pyre is what she does. As we see him getting the Qui-Gon treatment here. And I thought this was, it was cool to see the old Jedi funeral pyre again and doing it on the water and pushing him out there. It's very, I think who was it that used to do it?
Well, the Vikings, the Hawaiians,
right? Yeah,
the Polynesians used to do it.
Right.
I went to a luau once in Maui, and they reenacted that where a boat went out there.
Really?
These guys, and this one guy from the shore, he shot an arrow at it, and the arrow was on fire, and the arrow connected with the barge that they had floating out there.
Oh, that's cool. They do that in
The
Lord
whole
of the Rings
thing lit
too. Yeah.
The whole
Don't they do
thing
that in
lit
Lord
up.
of the Rings?
I don't remember.
I think they do
Probably.
that. Yeah. Anyway, so, and then of course, the big shot at the very end. We need to talk. Boy, she comes in and approaches Yoda with a lot of attitude, doesn't she? Like he did something wrong.
Yeah.
We need to talk. God, this is the most charmless character in all of Star Wars, this Vernestra. I've got Mac challenged me earlier today to as we look at this series as a whole, to sort of come up with our own version of the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yes.
And so, Jim, why don't you, I know you put a lot of time in this. I do have my good, my bad, my ugly sheets on fantastic stationery, by the way, that Jimmy Mac got me, which I love this. It's got my name on it. It's got the Imperial, or excuse me, the Rebel, excuse me.
Come on.
The Rebel symbol on there.
Come on, you know who butters your bread.
That's
it ain't
right.
the Empire. You'll see no Imperial cogs around here.
So I have my list. I have my good list, my bad list, my ugly. Jimmy, look at us. We're so cute. We have matching stationery. I've got my list. So Jim, you go, and if I have something that you haven't put on yours, I'll throw it out there.
All right. The good, the bad, the ugly. Just one more thing with the Yoda sequence. I just want to propose a question to you. Is Vernestra aware of the presence of the Sith specifically? Because that's a big question coming into the series. Everyone quotes Ki-Adi Mundi and says, well, the Sith have been extinct for over a millennium. I mean, couldn't it just be that she is going in to talk to him because she fears her former apprentice, Chimere, has slipped to the dark side without necessarily saying he's a Sith? There could be dark side users in the galaxy that don't ascribe to the Sith way or the Sith protocol or the whatever you want to call it. She could just be coming in there saying, the apprentice, I remember the one I whipped on the back that one time. He apparently he's reappeared and he's causing all kind of problems.
When I saw this scene, I immediately thought of when Marty McFly sees Principal Strickland in the past. He goes, "Jesus, didn't this guy ever have hair?" I see Yoda like, "Can we get a few brown wisps in there?" No, I think that what you're asking is totally fair, and what I don't want is for Yoda to get this stink on him where we find out that he's also covering this stuff up. You know what I mean? Like if Vernestra knows it's the Sith and she gives that information to Yoda, and we still got Ki-Adi Mundi running around thinking that they've been extinct, then that brings Yoda into this scandal, and now he's keeping things secret for 100 years. Saul lied for 16. Meet Yoda. He lied for 100.
They're part of an institution that has a lot of members and a lot of power. And I think it needs managing sometimes. And I think Yoda also kept it on the down low about the origin of the clone army in Attack of the Clones. All of a sudden, Yoda shows up on Geonosis in full command of a clone army created on Kamino. How did that happen?
Yeah.
I think Yoda kept all that on the down low, too. There are just certain things you have to do for self-preservation. And if it requires a little Jedi BS, then a little Jedi BS is what you're going to get. Like I said, they're like an institution, an organization.
Right.
And that things get swept under the carpet a lot. Okay, let's get into the good, the bad, the ugly.
All right.
We talk about the Acolyte. Starting with the good. I think the placement on the timeline for this show, 100 years before the Phantom Menace, offers a good entry point for newer casual fans. You don't have so much of an admission fee to watch this show. You can just plug right into it and watch. And I think that's a good thing. I also enjoyed the returns to places like the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and seeing Jedi in there doing Jedi stuff. And I even cheered the appearance of the Nemoidians on board their bridge in the very first episode. I was like, yeah, Nemoidians. I just enjoy those prequel callbacks or call forwards. I don't know how you say it when you're talking about a prequel to the prequels. Of course, we can't say enough about the fight sequences and saber duels. As I said before, clearly the best of the Disney era, whether it be film or streaming. I think another great thing about the show is Manny Jacinto is Khmer. He's very interesting. It's very interesting to have like a human and relatable Sith. Now, Dooku was a human, but he wasn't very relatable. Khmer brings a lot more humanity to the role, a lot more emotion to the role. However, I fear by doing so, you might verge on stripping away the mystery surrounding the Sith in general. And I don't know if they should be so pedestrian at the end of the day. Another highlight I thought was Jackie Lan, played by Daphne Keane. I thought her acting was really good, and she was covered in makeup and prosthetics, and she was conveying a lot more emotion for a character who's supposed to be emotionless too. She was delivering a lot more on that level than I thought Amanda Stenberg was. Plagueis and Yoda, their appearance in the show, however brief, was necessary. I read somebody had responded in one of our socials that the inclusion of Plagueis and Yoda in this final episode was akin to dangling keys in front of a baby. And I gotta say, I see it from that way. I mean, if you're going to bring the characters into it, give them something of substance, make them part of the story. Don't just shove them in there to scratch our itches, and that's kind of
Yoda
emblematic.
Yoda was a cameo, and I don't think he had really any story. There was no need for Yoda. Yoda was a gratuitous cameo. Plagueis for me was not, but that's just because I'm reading into it.
Yeah.
There was nothing in the story to indicate that he was a critical or a necessary character. So I think if they're dangling keys, it's the dangling keys works if it's just a cameo for the sake of a cameo. But if it's to include a character or add a character that has some real reason for being there, then it's different. I feel like the argument's better made for Plagueis than it is for Yoda.
Well, and also both their appearances could be setting the stage for emerging roles in season 2. Now we know they're there. Let's make them part of the thing. But why wait till season 2? I mean, for crying out loud, who knows if there's going to be a season 2? There's like a 50-50 chance at best that there's going to be a season 2. But I really like that comment the guy made. It's like dangling keys in front of us, in front of a baby. It's to me, it's emblematic of the way Lucasfilm infantilizes the fan base to begin with. And also is emblematic of the fact that they're really chicken to do anything with some of these legacy characters. And they always use the same excuse. Well, there's so many different stories being worked on. And some, you know what? Tighten it up. The story, but I'll say the storytelling on a whole was in this series. I felt like it was far more coherent and easier to follow than anything that happened in Ahsoka, which to me was a mishmash of a bunch of ideas thrown into a blender, 4 episodes stretched out to 8. And still plenty of blanks left at the end. This show did a better job making it a more fulfilling one season experience. And I thought the soundtrack by Michael Abels was great. However, it was lacking any distinct character or story themes throughout. It was all much more sort of moody and
It was atmospheric.
Yeah. Right. All right, now let's get into the bad.
Let me just add. I have a couple of good.
Good.
I
sorry,
agree with you.
Jason.
No, it's okay. I agree with you on seeing Coruscant and the Jedi chambers. I also thought the Jedi ship was very Star Warsy. I thought a lot of the interiors, even Chimera's hideout, felt very Star Warsy to me. I liked the environments. Now the planets, it's. And this is happening with Disney Plus. It's always a rocky planet with some water, and some greenery. Everything's looking very much the same for me. But as far as the interiors, the greeblies, the props, for the most part, I found all of it very much, I refreshingly very Star Warsy, with one huge exception, and that is the Wookiee's metal detector. That was one where that is one big exception. I also think on the good list is Chimera's look. I liked the helmet. At the end of the day, I liked that he wasn't just a red evil guy. Like the comics sort of devolved into that there for a period of time during like the Dark Horse era. They were always red. It was and very much in the style of Maul, but you just take another alien race and just kind of mollify them. So I thought Chimera's design and look was really good. Those are just the ones that I would throw out that I didn't hear you specifically mention.
Good ones. And there's other good things about the show too, but those are the ones that really jumped out to me. Now the bad. Basil. Character ultimately served no purpose at all to the story.
Other than to confuse, really. Just to completely confuse.
Yeah. The only impact he really had on the story was when he inexplicably pulled the wires on that starship as it was pursuing, his soul was pursuing May through the rings of the planets. And that was really a great visual. And we have no idea why Basil did that. None whatsoever. It's all speculation at this point. And quite honestly, this guy, this what did I call him? A beaver weasel or something? This sniffing weasel beaver. He just. I mean, I just don't even have time for anymore. I don't know what this thing is, but it served no purpose to the story. Maybe I'm missing something, guys. If somebody does find a purpose for the story that can be clearly explained through the exposition and through the beats of the story itself without us having to fill in the blanks, because I could come up with a bunch of different things for what Basil meant to the story, but I can't understand why he was included in this thing at all. The Jedi don't need a tracker. They can sense things through the Force. Jedi were doing that in this very show. And then let's talk about the Jedi in this show. What a bunch of sad facts that they get. The worst Jedi of all time. So if a show is going to portray the Jedi in a negative light, at least there weren't really cool Jedi being, thrown into that spotlight. They all kind of blew. They were just the lamest group of Jedi ever gathered.
Hey, Jim, can I go back real quick to when you were talking about Basil? Because there was this scene where I felt like Saul was trying to get a read on where May was. You can see him. We were showing the photo. He gets off of his ship, and he's quieting his mind, and he's got his hand drawn. So the Jedi do have tracking abilities for this type of thing. So I don't get the Basil moment.
No. The inconsistencies among the Jedi themselves, just really, really strange. More of the ugly. Vern.
Are we on the bad or are we on the ugly?
Oh no, I'm at the bad. I'm sorry.
The bad. Okay.
We didn't get to that. Vern. Just Vern. That's all I'm going to say about her. Another thing, Torben is homesick. That was a lame thing to motivate him. He's homesick. Give us something. Give us something with a little more meat on the bone. There you go. And the character flip flops again. We talked about May and everything. I'm not going to repeat that. There were just some general awkward interactions among the characters from time to time. Mog and Vern, Jackie and Osha. I mean, just May and Soul. I mean, there's awkward interactions, and I think that might have to do a little more with poor direction going on in the show from time to time. Let's talk about Pip, the worst droid counterpart in the history of Star Wars.
Oh,
Why
no.
do we like Pip? What makes Pip likable, necessary? He's a tool. Why does Osha, before she turns Pip into a flashlight and sticks him on the back of Chimere so that the bugs float away with him, why does she go, I love you, Pip? It is the most cringy thing I think I've ever seen in Star Wars. I love you, Pip. You're a flashlight. I love you. I just love you. Shut up. That's insulting. Why does she love Pip? Seems to be nothing more than a tool. No personality and no bonding revealed between Osha and Pip. It was just instantly there. We never understood why she loves her little tricorder droid. It makes no sense. We talked about the lack of creativity with the environments. Brendok and Kofar were essentially the same. They lacked exotic qualities. Don't talk to me about the bugs on the tree. That was interesting for about half a second until it was proven that they serve no threat whatsoever. The planets are boring. There was nothing even special about that Sith planet either.
Yeah, I agree with all of those. The only thing I mentioned was I felt that the pacing really started to fall apart after episode 2 for me, having 2 out of 8 episodes being flashbacks, dedicated flashbacks, without a strong narrator presence. I didn't like that, and I also just the too many back and forths. I think you might have mentioned this, Jim, but just the flip flopping was really hard for me to follow. Oh. Yeah. Largely because of, as you pointed out, the two being twins, and then just the way that the episodes were cut. So it was very hard for me to follow that stuff.
More of the bad. I don't know. I thought the sets looked kind of lame, and I thought maybe they were just poorly lit and poorly shot. I'm sorry, you liked Chimere's Cave. Yeah. But I thought it looked so phony. It seemed about as advanced as the Bat Cave from the 60s, but without the cool bat computers and stuff. And some of the environments almost had this like theme park, Galaxy's Edge type vibe. It all just felt so fake and phony to me. And I just think that the sets were probably built beautifully, but they just were not shot appropriately. I don't know. It felt like a TV show in that regard to me.
Yeah.
Another thing that, and this is to echo something that you said in our first reaction show. There's no heroes in this show.
Yep.
There are no heroes. We're expected to root for the evil characters. And that doesn't work in Star Wars. There's no real hero protagonist. I never felt the desire to root for the twins or the witches or Chimere or any of them. And on the other, and the Jedi are so lame, and they're portrayed in such a negative light, and it just, by portraying the Jedi in a negative light doesn't make the Sith heroes. Okay? That's not how Star Wars works. And then there's Mog.
I put Mog, the weak ass Jedi. I put them in the ugly. They were so. It was so bad for me that they made it into the ugly, and I also put the no heroes in the ugly. So yeah, so some of your bad I threw in into the ugly. Also, the ugly crying. Just always crying and hugging, and the repetitive nature of that, which I talked about, I hated. But I thought the most unforgivable thing was the lack of heroes in this show. It's a Star Wars show.
For me, okay, so we've moved into the ugly. For me, the ugliest thing is the horrible PR surrounding this show. I think everyone in the Lucasfilm PR department should be fired. The comments made by Leslie Headland, a collider. Lightsaber is a phallic symbol. Benign sexism. Paternal protection. We get it. We get it. You hate men, and so does your staff. Message received. Real positive message to send to a predominantly male audience for Star Wars. And we know it's a predominantly male audience because Kathleen Kennedy said before the season even started that because it's a predominantly male audience that we don't like when female creatives get involved. Oh, yeah? Okay, well, let me see all the hate mail Rosario Dawson has been receiving. Let me see all the hate mail that Bing Na Wen has been receiving, Bryce Dallas Howard. I mean, come on. It's not so cut and dry. Give us good stuff. We don't care if it's a guy or a girl writing it. Make it good. And don't make it so self-serving and self-indulgent. And I mean,
don't make it all. Here's an idea. Don't make it all about you.
And that's what Leslie Headland did. Soul, Master Soul, and the relationship he has with Osha is a representation of all of Leslie's daddy issues. I don't need that in my Star Wars. We don't need someone's individual angst fueling the machine. We need someone there who knows how to blend all of the classic elements of storytelling throughout the ages, put it together in a mixing pot, and create something great like George Lucas did. And that's the foundation of Star Wars. You're trying to reinvent the wheel based on your own hangups, the pushback to the Jedi religion. And this is what I take out of these interviews she's been giving. Her pushback to the Jedi religion, as seen in the show, parallels her own pushback to religion. Why don't you just alienate your audience even more? Kathy Kennedy looked at an earlier draft of the show and said to her, Leslie, you created a great Star Wars story. Now go and make it a Leslie Headland story. What a dumb idea, because she took the ball and ran with it, creating a show that's so obviously self-serving and self-indulgent, and it all gets revealed in these interviews she does. And I know you don't have to read the interviews to watch and enjoy the show or watch and analyze the show, but I do read the interviews, and I'm telling you that if I lose faith in the storyteller, I lose faith in the story. And her Collider interviews that she's done throughout the season are so obvious, just absolutely horrid. She gets led along by the interviewer, but then takes the bait with such great zeal, resulting in some of the worst takes of Star Wars I've ever read in my life. I mean, reading the back and forth between the interviewer and the interviewee in these Collider interviews is like watching two kittens play in a litter box. Hey, get that out of your mouth. You're not supposed to eat that. And that's the ugly.
All right. Well, we do have some lines open. They've been freed up. Some people have given up, so we're going to try to get to as many calls as we can. But first, some super chats here. By the way, that number is 708-866-1737. Super chat here from Calvin McPherson says, not my favorite, but still enjoyed it. Would like a second season, but just want anything outside of the Skywalker era. Give me 400-year-old Grogu as Mandalore or Padawan Yoda circa 900 BBY. He's saying, hey, go into the future. Go into the future and let's see a grown-up Grogu. That's interesting. So RFR number one. Thanks, Calvin. That's really nice of you to say. Thank you.
Back in the Dark Force days, they did an arc that ran 50 issues called Star Wars Legacy, and it was all about
I read that whole series, by the way.
The Skywalker's two generations into the future. So it's like Luke's great-grandson or something like
Cade? Was it Cade Skywalker?
Cade Skywalker, yeah. And it was a kind of compelling, interesting story that
he was like He-Man. He had like long blonde hair and he was all buff.
A little bit. He was definitely like ready for the World Wrestling Federation or whatever.
Right. Jeff Holland says, cheers, fellas. Let's have a fun last RFR Acolyte RFR Live after show. Thanks, Jason, J-Mac, and Tyler. I kind of liked Acolyte enough to want me to see a season 2. All right. Well, cheers to you, Jeff. Thanks very much, buddy. and I think we've had a great season. We've had a lot of fun here. Adam Locke says, thanks RFR for another great season of after shows. I didn't love a lot of Acolyte, but I do still want a second season. It finally hit for me in the finale, which gives me hope that a season 2 would only go up from here. That's I think a good way to look at it. I said last week that I'd be up for a season 2 if it got a whole new creative team. I think you need to take it away from Leslie Headland.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind seeing a season 2, if only like the show revealed potential, great potential in season 1, but it didn't find it. It didn't reach its potential. But I think that a lot of foundation's been laid to make a great season 2, or I wouldn't mind if the storylines were picked up elsewhere by like more competent storytellers, and definitely not a showrunner who has so many obvious issues with herself and society in general. I mean, Star Wars doesn't need to be hijacked to spread such downer sentiments. And that's kind of ultimately what I get from the Acolyte. It's, as you said in our reaction show, it's not uplifting. Is it fun from time to? Yes, it's fun. But it's not uplifting. It's tragic and sad and kind of pathetic at times. Yeah.
Like there were moments in Bad Batch, and that's an animated show where, I'd pump my fist like, like I would be into it. I'd be rooting. And I felt that way for Saul in the first few episodes. And then I'm like, oh man, now I don't even really root for this guy anymore. He let me down after a while.
I don't root for the witches. I don't root for Mayor Osha. I don't root for the sad sack Jedi. And including Saul. It's just there's no one to root for on this show.
Yeah.
Salby
Crumb says, I end this without really caring about any of these characters. Liked Saul, but we saw the death coming. Most memorable thing is fight choreography and 2 seconds of Plagueis. Won't be upset with no season 2. The only thing that bugs me about no season 2 is, and I alluded to this last week, is it becomes then a waste of time.
Yeah.
Now I don't mean that. Look, that us hanging together as fans and brothers and sisters in the Force is a waste of time. No, I don't mean that. But what I mean, Jim, is if the fandom is going to be tested, if the fandom is going to be tested to the degree that fandom was tested with the Acolyte, make it worth something. This show didn't take any great, big, bold strides.
No, it sure didn't.
If we're going to be tested, I want to be tested for a reason.
They promised us a show that was going to be told from the Sith perspective. Yet at the end of season 1, we're left with very little to learn about the dark side of the Force and the Sith in general. It's kind of just rehashing the same old crap we already knew. So I think that if they're going to shoot that high, they got to deliver. And they didn't really bring any new interesting twists to the story of the Sith, other than to try to develop some kind of sympathy for them that appeals to like the Twilight crowd or giggly young Raylos who love to ship characters and write fan fiction. I mean, fine, this is for you. Enjoy.
Right.
But it's missing the mark, like most fanfic does. It misses the mark.
Right.
So
very CW. I think CW is a very
that
fair
can be said as well.
Comparison. All right, let's jump over to the phones and let's talk to Patreon member from Ohio. How cool is that? All right, Mark from Ohio. Thanks for your patience, Mark. Oh, wait a minute. Let me unmute you there. There we go. Hello, Mark.
Marky Mark. It's Marky Mark.
Hey, this is Scott Marks calling from Ohio. Chut, chut, and hey, guys.
Chut, chut.
Hey, here to talk a little High Republic with you guys and what this series does or doesn't actually connect with from the books.
Oh, great, great. Because I was wondering myself, you're calling it just the right time. This is clearly a show that was made for fans of the High Republic, which is mainly young adults. That's a mainly young adult audience. How old are you?
Okay, so I am certainly, I don't think I fall in that category. I'm
How old you were.
I'm
You're not
42, so
Okay.
I'm 42, so it depends on how what you consider a young adult at that point.
Sorry, man, but you don't qualify as a young adult. Your glory days are over.
All right, that's okay.
But I'm glad you're trying to keep up
I'll
with the youth.
accept that.
No, I'm just kidding. I really want to hear what you have to say about the connections this show makes with the High Republic.
Yeah, and actually, I really think I want to talk about the lack of connection because, I am a fan of the High Republic novels, and as much as it pains me, Jimmy, every time I hear your take on them, I certainly respect it. But I was very pleased in the first episode of this show when you, Jimmy Mack, called out the crawl for it, saying that there had been like hundreds of years or thousands of years of peace in the galaxy. And to me, immediately that sort of set a little red flag as far as how much fidelity to the canon of the High Republic this show would have. And so then, as the show went on, I think a couple of weeks ago, you guys were talking about, I'm not sure if it was Jimmy or Jason, but sort of like, what is the point of this show? And is it really all about putting a spotlight on the High Republic and trying to get more viewers or more readers over the High Republic? And it made me think, my theory on it, I'll get into a little more, is that I actually think Leslie Headland has never heard of the High Republic, never read a single book, had no connection to it, was obviously a prequel fan. And I think, King had this idea for a show set 100 years before The Phantom Menace. And the folks at Lucasfilm were kind of like, oh, hey, we actually have a whole series of books in that same era. And I think the two ideas, in my opinion, kind of got grafted together in a way that's not always very consistent in the show.
You're probably right.
And again, my first signal about that was the crawl in the first episode, where I thought, like, that's just not true. The galaxy's certainly not been at peace, and the conflict with denial was definitely galaxy-wide, involved the Empire, involved the Jedi, all of that. And then I think, to me, the main thing that really hits it home is the Vernestra character. And I think Jason said it really well tonight when he talked about the charmlessness of the character in this show. And that, to me, is just so kind of the opposite of the way this character is portrayed in the book. So one, she's like the most heroic character you can imagine. She's the youngest Jedi Master ever at that time in the books. And possible spoiler alert here, her entire character arc in this third phase of the books is about, there's actually a senior Jedi who kills one of the Nihil in sort of cold blood, heat of battle kind of thing. And it's Vernestra that is really pushing him that he has to share this with the council, what he's done. Now, you could say, I guess there's some irony or poeticness to her situation now, but I think that's kind of giving the writers and the continuity too much credit here. And I think it is just, they had an idea for a show, an idea for characters. They had this High Republic thing, and they had this very young character in the books, which they thought, okay, we could flash forward 100 years and have her still be involved. So again, in my opinion, as a fan of the books, I don't think there's a lot of real connection. I think they're Easter eggs that were just sort of, inserted in to kind of tie things together. But to me, it is actually a disappointment as a fan of the books, how they've sort of treated the era, and then more specifically how they handled this character of Vernestra.
Well, I'm really glad to get your perspective, because that's something that we really haven't had. Mark is, I'm sorry, it is Mark, right? I got Mark from Ohio. Is that the last name?
It's Scott. My last name is Mark, but I get it all the time, so no worries.
All right. Well, that's
People call me
Tyler's
Mark
fault.
all the time, so you're good.
That's Tyler's fault.
Here's
the guy. This is the guy that screwed it up right here. No, I'm teasing. We love Tyler. But Scott, I'm glad to have your perspective, because we haven't really heard from many people that are big fans of the High Republic series and how this has or has not been a true addition to that era of Star Wars. So That's very interesting, and also good to know that Vernestra isn't really being given the best portrayal here in this series, considering that she's a very long-lived and consequential character in the High Republic book. So great call, and thanks so much for being a Patreon and for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you, Mark Paul.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, buddy. All
Scott.
right, let's...
Whatever
Scott, Mark?
his name
Yeah.
Mark Paul Scott.
Let's talk to another Patreon member here. We've got Andrew. Andrew is a member also of the RFR Facebook group.
Yeah.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, guys. Sylvester Cristal, everybody.
Why not? I can go for about 10.
I usually shout it out, but I thought it'd be a little bit classy this time. So I have a theory about the Acolyte, and I have a few points that might back that up a little bit. And I'd love for you guys to hear me out first before you hop in. But I have a gut feeling that, well, let me backtrack. Rise of Skywalker taught us that a powerful Sith Lord can manipulate and puppet another person from systems away. And for, how Palpatine manipulated Snoke, I have a gut feeling to maintain the rule of two and its purity, Chimere is actually the Snoke to Plagueis, and Plagueis is puppeteering Chimere, and it's actually him calling all the shots and controlling Chimere. One thing that made me think about this at first was in one of the final episodes when Osha has the helmet on and Chimere has his black eyes moment. It's one entity in the black-eyed realm and one still in the actual world that gets to pull the helmet off, as if there are two entities there. And being that Plagueis' race, the Moon, have a life expectancy of 100 years, plus his manipulation of the Force to extend his life, him and Venestra could have been coming up at the same time, because Venestra in the Acolyte is 116 years old. And I think about it in Brendock, when Venestra arrives and Chimere has his helmet off and she does her Force radar thing, she senses it and goes, "You." She's not sensing Chimere. She's sensing Plagueis.
I don't know, but I mean, there's obviously a connection between Chimere and Vernestra, considering he was her Padawan. And that would have been long before any sort of dark side involvement. So I don't...
but it never actually spell out it was Chimere that was her apprentice. She doesn't flat out say in the show. It could be what she's sensing was her apprentice, which could have been, the ages line up, could have been Damask or whatever Plagueis was before he became a Sith.
Yeah, Hugo Damask. But I'll tell you this. I don't... While I think that that's an interesting take on things, I don't think that's at all what the filmmakers are trying to convey. I think they're making it pretty clear to us that Chimere is working under his own individuality and Plagueis is a separate person. The way it works with The Rise of Skywalker is Snoke was artificially created. And that's why I think Palpatine was able to control him from vast distances and everything else. I think Chimere is his own person. I think he's looking for the day where he can rise up and kill Plagueis and take his spot. But he doesn't get the chance, obviously. And I'd like to know what his fate eventually is. Yeah. Because we know he will end up dying in some probably horrific sort of way, maybe at the hands of Palpatine himself. So, I'm also skipping. Tenebris was Plagueis's master. At this point, I think we're to assume Plagueis is the Sith master, and he's already killed Tenebris. And
wait a minute. Why do you say that?
Well, because then Plagueis would be the apprentice and Chimere would be the acolyte to the apprentice. And so the acolyte would have an acolyte.
Okay, yeah.
The rule of two can only be pushed so far.
Dogs and cats living together.
Yeah.
Chaos.
Mass hysteria. Yeah. No, I was just thinking, like, maybe Vanessa did have a history with Chimere, and the whip mark in his back is a dead giveaway. But the possibility that maybe at some point in the past he was left for dead, Plagueis comes up and let me control you, and you will get your revenge for what happened to you. And that's how he welcomes Plagueis into his mind. Because remember, Plagueis was he was able to cheat death. Who knows what else he had control over with all the Sith arts at his level and whatnot.
Yeah, no, I mean, that level of control that you're talking about there, it's interesting. But I have to think that these people have to also work with a certain level of autonomy, because they're always trying to outfox the master. And if the apprentice is always under the spell, so to speak, of the master, then that kind of undermines sort of how the rule of two perpetuates itself a bit. But I think you're right, Andrew, in the sense that they are puppet masters. Palpatine wasn't the first. He was one in a long line of, he was arguably the most successful. And they can bring the shroud of the dark side and cloud the minds. And because I think it's implied in one of the novels, is it not, one of the prequel novels, that Palpatine is manipulating through potentially force power the Senate.
Yes.
Yes. And Mace Windu confirms that when he tries to apprehend him.
I am the Senate. That's right. That's right. Hey, man. Hey, thanks for...
He has control over the Jedi Council and the Senate. He's too powerful to be left alive.
That's right. That's right. I love it. Hey, man. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. Do you have something else you wanted to say? I saw a note here. Did you make all your points?
I did make my points. I was going to start by asking Jimmy, how's your throat after all that lovely Jedi screaming acting that you just showed all of us?
That was a mistake, let me just say. Especially on a Monday. For me, usually, you're right.
Are you regretting it right now, sir?
A little bit. I am. I'm regretting more what I'll sound like tomorrow, actually. And I know better than that.
Don't worry. The Scots will heal that right up, my friend.
Well played, Andrew. Calling. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. All right. Well, I think you all know what's ahead. We've got to do it. You know what time it is. Time for Blake's Take. All right, Blake. You know what, buddy? I thought, well, it's summertime. There's no school. Blake's not out playing the baseball. And I thought we've got time. And then I saw Tyler put in a note. He's like, hey, Swank, he's still got a 10:30 bedtime. So we're jumping on the call. Sorry we made you wait. Thanks for staying up late with us. What do you got here?
Hey, it's all right.
Episode 8, the end of the season. What is the Blake's take on the Acolyte season 1?
This season, well, the show altogether, I feel like it was like there were points to where it wasn't really good, but then there were points where it really peaked up in the show. Like the one episode to where Chimere goes out and fights all those Jedi and does all that. That was a cool episode. We saw a battle, and it wasn't just them talking the entire time. And then this current episode we just had was also super good, because it was like we got a bit of everything. Yeah, we got a bit of story, but we also got action with it too.
Yeah,
which I feel like that's the best part about every Star Wars show.
And things happen.
Is whenever you have a little bit of talk and a little bit of action.
Right, a little bit of talk, so we know what's going on, and a lot of action. And there were consequences to the action. Characters died.
Yeah.
And the show makes no
a lot of
apologies
characters died.
Yeah. And that's what I look for in television. I find there's a lot of TV shows you can watch a whole season and nothing happens. Nothing of consequence. In this show, they didn't hold back. And as FJ says, your potty mouth prophet says, show's got a lot of balls to do what it did. But ultimately, those are moments. And when you look at the big picture of the story, you have to ask yourself, are those moments something that adds up into a great story? Or is there kind of a weak story surrounding some really great moments? And I don't know. To me, the jury's still out on this show as far as that goes. I think it laid down so much groundwork to where these stories really do have to be continued, especially the ultimate fate of Chimere. I could care less about OSHA, but the ultimate fate of Chimere is something that I'm really concerned with. Because I mean, we know that it's going to end up bad for Chimere and OSHA because they don't work their way up the Sith ranks. And we know where that all, I mean, the ultimate Sith plan pays off by the time we get to the original trilogy.
I gotta jump in here, Jim, just to say, and I don't know if you or Blake disagree. I think that if we get a season 2, I think that they're dedicated to these characters of May and OSHA. I don't see this show turning into Chimere's series or Chimere's story. I see, if anything, happening, one of them bumping him off and them becoming the apprentice.
Well, then Palpatine will kill OSHA or May.
Right.
Both of
right.
Just let's behead him and get it over with.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Blake, you're a dark. We know that you bleed red, and that you're a dark sider, and some of your favorite characters are Sith and all of that. I mean, this show was kind of, I guess, for people like you that identify with the bad guys in the Sith. Were you feeling that, or was this not your type of Sith?
It felt more like, I know the show was supposed to be like in the way of the Sith, like the Sith's point of view, but it felt more like it didn't really lead up to that. We saw a lot more of the Jedi's point of view than we did with the Sith.
Well, you're right.
Like,
you're right about that. You're right about that. That the narrative was told largely through the eyes of the Jedi, and May and OSHA, very little through Chimere's eyes, none through Plagueis' eyes. So you're right that the story unfolded that way, but at the end, we're left with this idea that we should be either joyous or supportive or happy that these two crazy Sith kids are, looking at the sunset together.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they could have, in some way, they want you to feel good about the Sith. But at the same time, you don't want to feel that, because the whole main part about the Sith is they're like the outcasts, basically. Mm-hmm. They're the people you don't want to be in the Star Wars universe.
Unless you're Blake.
Well, they're just cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And we're talking to a young man who thinks that, Jim, it's just like what you were talking about earlier about the scene with Darth Vader in Rogue One. It wasn't that we were like, yeah, Vader is finally getting revenge on those nasty rebels that have oppressed him. We're all Blake, and we're like, oh, cool. We've always wanted to see Vader kind of open up a can on these characters. So it's a completely different place. You're not sitting there going, oh, Darth is finally beating his oppressors and living his best life, and whatever.
The best part about.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I feel like the best part about the Sith, though, normally, is that you're not supposed to feel good. Like you're not supposed to want them to win. that's what makes it so much better in the prequels and the original trilogy and the sequels. Is because you don't want them to win, but it makes them cool because they're just attacking everyone. But in this show, they want you to feel it, and it feels more like they're bringing it down on you.
Yeah, right,
Like
right.
they want, like the Sith weren't like there. I don't know. I loved Chimere's action sequences, yeah, but the story with it though, it felt strange.
Well,
it didn't feel like normal Star Wars in a way.
Yeah. B-Spin on the chat here is reminding us this show was described as a murder mystery. Well, that mystery didn't last very long.
It was hardly a murder mystery at all.
To be honest.
Yeah. I mean, May was caught red-handed in the first scene of the show. There's no mystery about it at all. What really fueled the mystery was the motivations behind the murder. That's what fueled the mystery. The murder itself wasn't a mystery. This was no Sherlock Holmes situation or anything like that. It was definitely an oddball take and kind of a twisted take on Star Wars, especially when you read interviews with Leslie Headland talking about Osha's triumph. And I really struggle with it. I struggle with that. She's not a hero, and she's not a hero to me, especially because I've been watching Star Wars for over 4 decades. I know who the heroes are supposed to be.
Blake,
try to reinvent the wheel.
You're definitely one of our heroes here, and we love having your calls and all of your observations on our after shows. It looks like our next date is likely to be with, I'm guessing, Skeleton Crew, unless we get Andor first. But okay, Skeleton Crew, no official date, but we're thinking fall, I would assume.
Yeah, I think I've heard November, the holidays, they say just vaguely the holidays. It'll be out on Christmas. It's like, what are you going to drop a Christmas Day? If we do get additional content before Skeleton Crew, it could be in the form of one of those Tales of the Jedi animated shows. But we've received no indication that anything like that is on the schedule. So I really do think it is going to be about 3 months until we get the Skeleton Crew. So we'll see how that goes. All right, Jake, Blake, as a kid,
I already let Blake go. I'm sorry.
Damn it.
Blake,
I was wondering if he was.
He only had 3 minutes to get to bed.
Oh yeah, we got to make sure that he brushes his teeth, says his prayers, and gets tucked in properly. So, hey, Kid Blake, I was just wondering if you're looking forward to seeing kids take the center stage as a kid yourself. If you're interested in seeing that in Skeleton Crew, so you and your dad can just drop me a line and let me know, and I'll pass it along to everyone.
All right, let's see who else we have here on the line. Let's go with we got our buddy Eric. Eric calling in. Eric from Phoenix. Another one of our favorites here, always with us on these after shows when he doesn't have something else going on, which he normally does on Wednesdays. So he's here with us on a Monday night. Right, Eric?
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys moving this for me. That means a lot.
Anything for you, buddy. Anything for you. All right,
Swank scheduled his whole vacation around it.
I did. Lay it on us. What do you got?
Yeah, so I really appreciate it. You're good, bad, and ugly. So I've got 3 good and 3 bad. Once again, I'm channeling my inner Paul from Alulu because he said I liked everything. So I got 3 things I didn't like, and I've got stuff. I try to pick things you guys either didn't talk about or didn't talk about a whole lot. So I'm going to start with the good.
Okay, let's hear it.
So number 1, I liked everything that happened in space for the most part. I liked the spaceship designs. I really liked that chase scene in the last episode, where they were going through the ice or whatever that was.
It was like
I thought that was pretty cool. And all
it was the rings. It was the rings, the planet rings. And it was like, as they called it, I just got to say, in the descriptive audio track, they referred to them flying through cosmic debris. And if you're a Frank Zappa fan, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Somebody out there is understanding me right now.
Yeah, and they, I thought some of the planet designs from space I liked. Now, when they got on the planet, a lot of them look the same. So there's one good thing for me. Second thing, I really liked the callbacks they had to the prequel music. I didn't think the score overall was great. There's really nothing memorable about it, but I did like how they did the callbacks, and I thought when they did it, it worked pretty well. And then the last thing I had for a good thing was Kamir, and thank you, Tyler, for getting the right name. I was calling him something between Quirrell and some other name because I can't keep everybody's name straight in this series. I must be my age or something. I can't keep them straight. But Kamir, when he went into the fortress, he didn't go in through the door. He disappeared and ended up inside. And I thought that was pretty cool. I don't think we've seen that for sure. I know we haven't seen that in live action. I don't think. I have no idea how he did it. I don't know what it was because, of course, they didn't explain it. But I thought it was kind of a cool element that they added to the series. And then I got my three bad things. So number one, in that spaceship chase, where May's getting chased by Soul, I thought that was pretty cool. And they very specifically added a line that May says where she explains that there's no hyperspace on her ship. So we all understand why she doesn't escape. And that proved to me the writers had some common sense, that they actually explained something that happened in the series.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating because there's literally, 30, 40 other things that they gave absolutely no explanation to, that you kind of needed to have what happened make sense. And you guys hit on several of those already tonight.
All right. I'm going to go with that one.
And then I got another one. So crashing into a planet, crashing from space down to the planet's surface, you only get one of those in a series. You can't have two.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. This is not.
Yeah. And Star Wars physics, I get it. Sound in outer space. We're talking lightsabers. I'm good with all that. I can suspend disbelief once, but twice. I mean, come on, do something different. Come up with a different idea.
Well, that's what I mean. This show is so repetitive.
Yeah.
For only 8 episodes, it's so repetitive.
For only 8 half-hour episodes.
Right.
Yeah, you got to tighten it up. You got to tighten it up. I mean, stop stretching things so much. How many times is Osha or May going to wake up? How many? I mean, it just needs help. It needs some help. I think there's great potential for an amazing story in here, but I think execution-wise, there's some failure along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Jim. And then my last one that I cannot let go, and I'm probably the only one that this bothered, but the freaking RV in the episode where they test the girls. The Jedi got that RV parked outside. That's literally an RV that they spruced up. I can't get over it.
Eric, there's an RV. And don't get too attached to it because we're going to take it with us when we leave here next month.
Is that from, let me guess, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation? Is that right?
It is. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And Jason, I wouldn't be more surprised if I had woken up with my head sewn to the carpet. So there you go. There's my.
I love it. Eric, hey, man.
There's my.
Thank you.
My 3.
Those are good. Those are all good. Thanks, buddy. And thanks for all your support. Eric, he is definitely one of the good ones. Let's get over to some more super chats. Here's Calvin again. He says, forgot to say I was a huge fan of The Good Place, so my name for him was always Darth Dumbass. So is that Jacinto?
Yeah, he played a goof on that show. I have to admit I didn't really watch that show. They had it on, and I popped in and out, but
Okay.
yeah,
So he was on that show. Here's from David. David says, this show had some problems, but I agree with Jimmy that overall it's a thumbs up. I did not hear Jimmy Mack say overall it's a thumbs up, by the way.
I did say that.
Sorry. I should listen to our own show.
Well, it was the first reaction show.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And I still feel, I'll give it
still feel that way? Still feel that way. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the flaws are obvious. And there's a lot of feelings I have about certain things that go on in this show. But I give it a thumbs up. I don't believe it was a waste of time because, I mean, really, this whole experience fuels a lot of my enjoyment. I love the weekly discussions, the after shows, the anticipation of new live action Star Wars every week. And I always allow myself to enjoy new additions to the franchise before I really start ripping it to shreds. So
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
And going through that whole process to me is worth it.
Yeah.
So I don't think the show itself is a waste of time. If you look at the big picture, and there is no follow-up to any of these arcs or stories or anything, that'll be hard to ignore. And also the fundamental flaws of this show are hard to ignore, but I don't think it sucked. I thought it was enjoyable all in all, but fairly disposable Star Wars. Oops. And that's a quality you never want to ascribe to Star Wars. You don't want it to feel disposable. But I got the feeling that when Skeleton Crew rolls around and the Mandalorian Grogu movie and Ahsoka comes back and everything, are we even going to remember the Acolyte? What was that one with the cool saber duels? We'll be saying,
David also says, I heard a theory that the senator could have been controlled by Plagueis. Yeah, we had some others talk about that as well, and how much is Plagueis or any dark side character actually in control of this and in control of other characters' actions, etc. I don't know. I think that what you're seeing is an organic reaction from the Senate. But it's entirely possible that these seeds of mistrust from the Jedi are being planted by the Sith and by Plagueis. JJ Skywalker says, yo, since this is the last Acolyte after show, had to say that the song you guys use for the intro and outro is an absolute banger. May the force be with you. All right. So some J-Mac production there, getting kudos with our intro and outro song.
Nice.
Rob Strecker says, my theory is that Plagueis is going to kill both of them. Question is either, or Q, Chimere, what? Q is either a nobody or apprentice to, okay. Chimere is either a nobody or apprentice to Plagueis. Either way, he is a threat now. Well, yeah, I would say if he's got himself an acolyte who's fixing to become an apprentice, he is definitely a threat to his master.
Yeah, but I don't think Plagueis would get his hands dirty with killing an apprentice. I think he would bring in another apprentice, much like he did with Luke and Vader, or much like Palpatine did with Luke and Vader, and pit those two against each other. And whoever survives that will be his apprentice. I think that's kind of how the Sith do it. I don't think that once they bring on someone as an apprentice, I don't think that no matter how frustrating that apprentice may be, I don't think it's what the Sith Lord would do is actually kill that person. He would bring in someone else and pit the two against each other and have the apprentice prove himself to the Sith Lord. I believe that's traditionally more what they do.
Turtle Wars says this was one of my least favorite of the Star Wars TV series, but I'm definitely enjoying the ride with everyone just the same. So keep sending more new Star Wars. Thanks for all you do, RFR.
Yes.
Thank you, Turtle Wars. I love it. Enjoy the ride. Tanya, who also has been hanging with us on all these after shows, I want to thank her. She says, I just want to thank the boys for all the work they put in with the after shows. I don't really care for the Acolyte, but listening to RFR always softens the blow. Cheers, everyone, and may the force be with you. Well, thank you, Tanya. We definitely see you here, and we really, really appreciate your support and hanging with us every week. Kurt
She's a
says,
Patreon VIP. I just want to add, Tanya is. And I
excellent.
have a Q&A scheduled with her coming up in the next week or so. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Kurt Bearer says, I was let down by the Yoda cameo. Was hoping to see Bob Newhart waking up instead. I just had a terrible dream. Cerveza Cristal! RFR number 1. Thank you, Kurt. Appreciate
that. Works. I like that. That's funny.
Jimmy Jason, why were Osha and May always falling? Were they always falling?
Oh, there were a few shots, like when May was approaching Kelnaka's hut and she fell, and those little spore plants spit out spores, and that little weird basil saw her laying there, and he started going, and he stopped sniffing long enough to go, and there are a few other occasions where they do face plant. So that's fun. That's a funny observation.
Okay. I Am Rolling says, Vern, bad. Darth Jacuzzi, good.
Darth
Jacuzzi. That's a good one.
I like that because I said he had a hot tub there, Chimere, in his cave hideout. It looked like there was a hot tub in there. Darth Jacuzzi.
He knows what he's doing. Yeah, he's got the Sith bachelor pad going on. Yeah. Fart Party says, Chut, thanks so much for another great series of after shows, boys. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. You guys are just crazy generous with these super chats. I got to tell you, very, very, very kind. Johnny says, it was so exciting when that Force Awakens trailer came out and we were full of wonder and questions about this story. Now we are full of doubt and plot holes. These new Jedi are bummers, dude. Where to now? You know what, Gianni? For me, where to now is the next show. The next show, the next series of after shows. It doesn't cost you that much. A Disney Plus subscription isn't that much. It costs you a little bit of time, and you get to hang out with friends and talk about this stuff. And I really do believe that it will get better, that the course will be corrected. I'm having a good time regardless. But yeah, we do want more from our Star Wars, and I think we should expect more. And we should continue to voice our opinions, but I think we need to do it in a way that is, this isn't life or death stuff, right? This is entertainment. So do it in a way that is appropriate for what we're actually talking about here, and save the politics for the politics, and save. But this is Star Wars, and this is entertainment. So let's all take it with, let's all keep it in perspective. That's all I'm trying to say. Let's keep it in perspective.
Right. For a lot of fans, when they get introduced to elements of Star Wars that they don't like, they sometimes overreact by saying, well, this is the way Star Wars is going to be forever. Like it's over with. It's Star Wars will always be like the Acolyte forever.
Right.
Every story that gets told, it's like they finally settled on. Come on, you got to know
they cracked the code. They have the formula, and it's the Acolyte.
The current ownership and management of Star Wars these days, they're still throwing whatever they can think of at the wall to see if it sticks. And every show has been different. Every film has been different takes from different producers and stuff. I mean, the obvious comparison to draw to Star Wars has always been Star Trek. And the first 2 seasons of Picard sucked a duck. But that last season 3, was some of the best Star Trek I've ever seen. So you can't let yourself get painted into a corner, because there are a lot of people working on Star Wars. There's a lot of different stories being told, and it will continue to change, evolve. Sometimes it might seem like it's taking a step forward. Sometimes it might seem like it's taking a step backward, but there's always another show. There's always another story to tell, and there's always a different storyteller to tell it. So we just got to be patient, and hopefully we'll start to see maybe a little more consistency come out of Lucasfilm, which I think is what all fans are clamoring for, is confidence and consistency. And that's what Star Wars fans need the most these days.
Agreed. And there's always a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. Sorry we didn't get to all of the phone calls. I think we got through the super chats, so thank you once again for those, and also just for hanging out with us and supporting us here on the Rebel Force Radio After Show. There's going to be more of these. Obviously, this isn't the last Star Wars television series or Star Wars anything that's going to be coming out that is deserved of an after show. Better believe that Mandalorian and Grogu movie, when that thing comes out, there's going to be an after show. And of course, with all of the Disney Plus series in store, we've still got Skeleton Crew. We still have a second season of Andor. We know we're getting a second season of Ahsoka. So the future is bright. Oh, here comes Blake says he is down for Skeleton Crew as long as the kids are good actors. Thank you, RFR, for giving Blake an outlet to say it loud and proud. So
I hope.
Thank you, guys. We love Blake, and we love his contribution here to Rebel Force Radio and the after shows. Another guy that we have to thank here, of course, someone we couldn't do the show without, and that is Tyler Page. He is the official call screener and the program observer here at Rebel Force Radio and all of our after shows. What a great guy. Fantastic guy, and a definitely a fan favorite, a listener favorite, that's for sure. Tyler, lots of calls. We didn't get through them all. Anything that the callers or you wanted to bring up about this particular episode or this series in general?
I had a list of like 10 questions, like outstanding questions for the show, and you guys went through pretty much all of them. I could have missed this, but did you talk about, like, why did they have to leave May? Why did they have to mind wipe her? I don't know if you did talk about it, but
well,
I just didn't.
We kind of danced around it a little bit, because I was asking the question of was this a sacrifice that Osha essentially sacrificed herself to the dark side in place of May?
Yeah.
But as far as the mind wipe thing, I think that was more about she was always going to be hunted and pursued by the Jedi if she knew, because she knew too much. So they had to make it such that she didn't know anything, and it was also protection for Chimere and Osha as well. But it kind of didn't work, because she still got picked up by the Jedi, and she's still being hounded by Vernestra, and she's still going to be used to try and find Chimere and Osha. So yeah, the mind wipe thing, I would have rather her, had a scene where Vernestra said, well, we tried to get whatever we could out of the girl, but her mind's been wiped, and it's hopeless. The trail is cold. Like, do that,
Yeah, I mean, that's really all I had outstanding. I have gone on several rants in my head about this show over the last week, and I think it's best if they remain there, unless I'm having a beer with someone at this talk shop. But it's not my favorite. But cheers to those who like it.
Tyler, Eric is asking if because you're in a different place. Are you in an undisclosed location? But what they may not know is that you moved house, right?
I did. Yeah, this is not going to be the permanent setup, but but yeah. I'm hanging out with Leslie Hedder. She's they're in Vernestra over in the back corner.
They're hanging out with you.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you very, very. Well, wait a minute. Hold on. Scott St. Louis says, Bob. What is that? Bob.
WAP.
The Boston area Acolyte
Boston area Acolyte after watch party coming to a close, returning as Boston area Rebel Force Radio fans. The barf will return. Hey Scott, sorry we didn't get to the chaos and the madness and the mania going on there at the after party. We were running a bit long, but we do love your support, you guys, and the fact that you all get together and watch the show means a lot to us, and we've got more in store. And then finally here we got love the discussion, guys. Thanks so much. Well, thank you, Koku Shibo. Appreciate that. All right. Well, Ty, as we say, we couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much, and especially dealing with your move and all of that, and you having to hang out with Barry there for a few weeks just to have internet. We appreciate all of the adjustments and the sacrifice that you've made to help us out here. So we really appreciate it, buddy.
We'll do it without you guys.
All right. Thanks so much, pal. All right, Jimmy Mack, The Acolyte, Episode 8, The Acolyte, the end of the season. Final thoughts?
I got some final thoughts. You know I do, but I'm going to try to keep them as brief as possible. And because of the length of this conversation, I was able to get out most of the points I wanted to make. But something that I have to recommend to Rebel Force Radio listeners, just if you see Leslie Headland talking about the show, avoid like the plague. Because once she gets in your head, it really messes with you a little bit. I was glad to see that after reading her weirdo interview comments that I could still watch the show and enjoy it. And I did. But just the more she talks about it, the worse it gets. She reveals so much about her creative process, about what fuels the characters and things like that, that she almost removes any chance of individual interpretation of the story. And it's something I've praised the show creators for, allowing us to have the room to interpret. But now that the show is concluded, she's really barfing out everything to websites like Collider, which I didn't realize Collider was such a crummy website. I spent some time on it this past week, and what she does reveal is like everything is so derivative. She cites influences from Fight Club, Rashomon, The Matrix, Frozen, Kill Bill, Predator, Crimson Peak, Fellowship of the Ring, Cowboy Bebop, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Bram Stoker's Dracula, GoldenEye. It seems as if every plot point and character is seemingly borrowed from something else. Is there an original idea anywhere in this show? I'm not sure. I think just the whole take is the originality of the show. And the take itself is kind of a twisted take on Star Wars. But all in all, I thought the series was fine if it was a Star Wars show made 20 years ago. I mean, it felt like a TV show to me. It was lacking some of the richness, complexities, and epic tone that you see on some TV being made today. I think the short running times hurt this series. And I think Lucasfilm needs to grow up a little bit and production-wise catch up to the other studios, which sounds like the oddest sentiment in the world for me to be spilling out here on this microphone when I'm talking about Star Wars, because Star Wars always seemed to set the pace for the other studios, seemed to set the new standards. But I think production-wise, the studio needs to catch up a little bit. Maybe it's a case of being spread too thin. I don't know. All in all, I don't think the show was a waste of time. I really did enjoy it. I don't think it sucked. I thought it was enjoyable, but again, as I said, fairly disposable Star Wars, which you never want. That's a label you never want to apply to Star Wars. Nuke Gunray, not in this season.
All right, that's going to do it. We'll see you next time here on Rebel Force Radio. In the after show, we will return, most likely for Skeleton Crew. TBD, but we'll be catching you up on all the news and speculation as that and Andor Season 2 and Ahsoka Season 2 and Mandalorian and Grogu, all of that, covering that on the weekly podcast, Rebel Force Radio. So catch us there, rebelforceradio.com, and anywhere you find podcasts, you'll find us there. So that's going to do it for us. Once again, thanks to Tyler Page for hanging out with us and all of you this whole season. It has been a blast. Good, bad, and different. Regardless how you feel about the show, we've had fun, and you're a huge, huge factor in all that fun. So thank you all so much. Thanks for the support, all the kind words, and all the great conversation. Until next time, we will see you for Rebel Force Radio. I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you always.